across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon, yes, welcome to a Friday. It is the home of common sense. Thank you to Alex Phillips. Back very soon right here on Talk. Loads to get through this afternoon. Trump declaring there will be an everlasting peace in Gaza as Israel have ratified that ceasefire plan to bring home the last surviving hostages and end the war. Pro-Palestinian groups, however, in the UK continue to protest despite this agreement. These kind of half-wits don't really want agreement. They want perpetual hatred of Israel. That is what they are all about. Can I ask, should Trump have won the Nobel Peace Prize? I know it's a kind of strange question because he couldn't technically have won it, but you take the point. Also this afternoon, fake Taliban death threat letters are being used to deceive the Home Office in Afghan asylum applications. You can't make this up. A Telegraph investigation has revealed how corrupt officials in Afghanistan are producing letters for a fee, with an undercover reporter obtaining 3 fake documents for 40 quid. So then you show the Home Office over here, go, look, I can't go back, the Taliban are going to kill me, I've got the documentation. Do they really write you a letter? And Labour's digital ID saga continues with potential expansion to children now. As young as 13, Labour has praised India's biometric system as a model where over 1.1 billion people now have digital ID. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. You want to leave us a voice note? That's the place to do it. 87222 if you are dropping us a message. There's quite a lot in the kind of Trump stories. A lot of people losing their minds going, Donald Trump should have won the Nobel Peace Prize. I think the cut-off date for consideration was last January, so he was never going to win it anyway, just by the T's and C's of the Nobel Peace Prize people. Never going to happen. But notionally, or maybe next year, he might win it. I know Alex was saying that, you know, the Nobel Peace Prize people, they don't give stuff to people like Donald Trump. They give it to Barack Obama when he did naff all. And he wasn't even the president, by the way, at that point. Before he was the president, he won one for making a speech. Wouldn't it be great if there was a world with no weapons? I think John Lennon beat him to that some years before. He didn't win one. 0344 499 1000. Will Donald Trump turn out to be the greatest leader of modern times? We're kind of living in a world right now where a lot of sort of conventional things have kind of gone out of the window. If you look at the way our two-party system in this country has been really obliterated in the last, certainly in the last couple of years, and very much within the last 12 months. The general order of play, how stuff used to happen. There was a chronology or a protocol, a template, if you like. There were parameters in which things happened. And now it's all changed. You know, on paper, Donald Trump being the president it's a bit nuts, isn't it? You know, a lot of people would go, well, I mean, he's got a bit of an iffy backstory. And even if you don't believe all of the sort of allegations against him, whether they're financial or sexual, whatever they happen to be, there's going to be 1 or 2 in there that would go down as a misdemeanor. In any other world would preclude you from I mean, the comment he made years ago on The Coach about grabbing that would preclude you from ever standing. Can you imagine that in this country? That if, one of our leaders, one of our politicians was caught saying something. And I'm making no judgment on that, by the way, because that's not the point of this. The point is, we are living in kind of unconventional times, how things get done. So Donald Trump might not be everybody's cup of tea. And he might have, I think he's got a certain toxic magic to him, is the nearest I can get to kind of explaining the Trump thing. Because what is happening in Israel and Gaza, with the ceasefire, the deal has now been signed, it's all up and running, and away we go. It is peace in our time, kids. Will it last? We hope it will last. But I'm not absolutely sure it could have happened without Donald Trump. You see, this deal that was carved out was actually on the table about a year ago. It went under Biden's nose. It went under the Israelis, and they couldn't quite get it together. I think Netanyahu didn't want to see a peace deal while Joe Biden was in power. They pathologically hated each other. So there was a bit of that. Joe Biden didn't know what flipping day of the week it was. So the deal itself, nobody really believes Donald Trump sat up at night with a moleskin notepad and a quill carving out how he thinks this should unfold. This was kind of all, it was done, it was ready to go. They just needed to, dot the I's, cross the T's, get the whole thing sorted, and then sell it. Sell it and say it, and explain to the world what it meant to have it and the consequences of not going with it. And I just don't think a figure other than Donald Trump, and maybe at some point, there'll be another figure who's similar. I don't think anybody could have done it other than Trump in that respect. So I am going to ask the question, should he have won the Nobel Peace Prize, even though we know that technically it would have to be next year that he would go in the list. See, thoughts on that? And the wider question, will he turn out to be the greatest leader of modern times? Now, depending on where you are on your politics will depend on how you view him. But just look at this objectively. Even if you don't like Donald Trump, he is the bloke in charge when this peace deal has been reached. You can't, if you're a Biden fan or a Kamala Harris fan, you wouldn't be diluting it, going, well, it's nothing really to do with Kamala, as people are saying about Trump. He's the bloke in charge now. He's the man that's given all the press conferences. He's the man that's made all the phone calls. He's the guy that has said, look, get this done or it's curtains for you. And he said that, pulled the rug from under Netanyahu a couple of times. He's made his points really clear. And the robust and frank way in which he's executed those comments and those words and those statements is something that I don't think anybody else could have done, genuinely could not have done. And that doesn't matter what you think of Donald Trump. Would you concur with that? And will Donald Trump turn out to be the greatest leader of modern times? 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. Our phone lines are open. Of course, if he cracks Ukraine as well and does the double, then I think you'd have to, even the most critical Democrat would have to go, well, I'll take my hat off to him. He only went and he did the double. Donald did the double. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Oscar Redrup is with us, former number 10 advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister. Afternoon to you, Oscar.
Afternoon, Ian.
Good to have you with us. Well, it is worth a reminder, of course, bearing in mind we are in, pretty good times in terms of this deal. It's early days. In fact, it's merely hours. However, things are looking positive, and they haven't looked this way for a long, long time. Let's have a listen then to Donald Trump speaking on the whole issue on Fox News yesterday.
In a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, 2 of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. I ended 7 wars. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them.
That, of course, was on Fox News. That wasn't Fox News. That was the United Nations, Oscar, as I'm sure you were ahead of me on that one, unless Fox News have changed their set. But nonetheless, there it is. I mean, his claims of 7 wars are a bit iffy, but let's deal with the one that's being sorted at the moment. He's got to get a house point or two for what's happened, Oscar.
Yeah, he has. And obviously with this conflict, there is no resting on any laurels whatsoever. There is, I am as just a watcher, almost borderline paranoid at this point that there'll be an 11th hour disruption or complication here. But as we sit here now, what Donald Trump, and I think you're right, Ian, has ultimately played a huge part in securing is absolutely should be completely across the political spectrum welcomed. And it will obviously really grate and it will anger the Jeremy Corbyns of this world that and those that, you know, are politically aligned with him, that it is someone like Donald Trump who has got it done. And it's that uncomfortable thing that when people view politics like football teams, and the opposing team, the opposing politics to yourself is always wrong, is always the enemy, is always hateful, is always this, is always that. Like you cannot shake that. You can never be truly objective, sorry. And you can't view that, yes, you might not like X and Y about Donald Trump and his style, or even some of his domestic policies, or, you know, as you said, some of the allegations that are floated around him. You can despise all that stuff, but you cannot deny that the world, even in his first time as president, the world is a safer place with Donald Trump as president. He has proved that time and time again, and this is the latest iteration of that.
Yeah.
When it's that robust, I think it's that kind of almost primal kind of deal-making, kind of robust diplomacy that only he can do, it seems.
It's kind of strange, isn't it? Because I don't think anybody can fully, you know, if you asked a load of politics students to write 500 words to kind of encapsulate what you and I are now discussing, I think it'd be quite hard to do, to sort of put it in sentences as to what it is that a guy with so many dimensions to his personality, and Lord knows how many to his history and his backstory, but simultaneously is able to front up a peace deal like this.
He's a shark, and when the challenge of securing peace in the world as he would see it, and he has that huge bullish ego, he will lean into, I am the person, I can save, I am the one who can bring peace to the world, it is only me. And you get a sense that, like, the challenge of that, he has gone after like a great white shark, and he has been brutal in pursuing each sides of the negotiation, like grabbing them by the scruff of the neck and kind of bashing their heads together time and time again in order to get this done. And he has respect. People didn't respect Joe Biden. People actually don't tend to respect a weak America. Yeah. It is, and people might not like to hear it because it's not kumbaya and it's not all we're linking arms and isn't it all lovely and Joe Biden's got on the stage or Obama's done a lovely speech about, peace. That doesn't actually achieve peace. It is that tough America that people believe will be strong, truly believe will be strong. And actually, and this is what's unique to Donald Trump in a way that maybe, the Bush administration didn't even have, he has an unpredictability. And that's quite unnerving for people. And again, I think that's something that when he is bashing heads together and he's got, side X and side Y, Donald Trump's unpredictability at times makes them fall into line a little bit as well. Yeah. And just lastly on this, and this might be entirely wishful thinking, but, again, as we sit here now, I think if he does secure this peace deal, and it is, relatively, I mean, in terms of long lasting, I guess, and again, that's subjective, but this peace deal, I think, really helps with Ukraine, Russia. I think it builds momentum now. And I think it will get, it will G Trump up even more, as you said, going for the double.
100%.
And I think we could get to a place where Russia, Putin in particular, as the aggressor, I think we can get. I think this really, really helps with that, which would just be, as you said, any critics of Trump, would really have to look long and hard in the mirror about what they truly want to achieve if they can't commend someone for this.
Indeed. We'll take more calls and questions on that. Should Trump have won the Nobel Peace Prize? It's a notional question because, of course, he couldn't have technically won it because it was out of the time thing, so he might win the next year's one. Should he win it? Should Trump win the next Nobel Peace Prize for this? Oscar Redrop is with us. Let's go to this story, Oscar. I mean, no surprise on this. Labour's one-in, one-out scheme has seen just 26 migrants sent back to France. And in that time, over 10,000, not 10, not 100, 10,000 have arrived in Britain at the same time we've deported 26. This is a joke.
It's a complete joke. And isn't it in real contrast with the previous story we were just talking about, where we have, you know, kind of that, as I said, that kind of brute force decisiveness, like going after something. Here's the objective. I'm a leader and I'm going to go after it almost at all costs because it is so integral and so important to my ambitions as leader. And then you look at a story like this, where, you know, Keir Starmer and the Labour government have time and time again kind of dithered and, you know, been so hesitant around the tinkering around the edges. This policy, and I would say particularly from a communications, I hate that phrase in a way because it doesn't talk about the issues, but from an optics, I hate that word even more, perspective, it would have been better if they'd never done this one in, one out policy. 10 returns, and I know this sounds odd, but 10 returns back to France is almost worse optically than none.
The no returns,
because we will consistently see these headlines, these stories of thousands coming in at record speed and record levels, and, you know, 15 returned, 10 returned. It's a joke. It's embarrassing. He has senior people in the Labour Party really putting downward pressure on him as well in the Lords. Yeah. So it isn't just, you know, oh, the right wing, and, you know, it's not at all. He's got it internally now. I always
wondered, Oscar. Sorry, just to interject for a second.
Of course.
When you were talking about, you know, 10 is worse than none. To go back to the last Tory administration, Rishi Sunak in China, he called an election. He could have called an election much later in the year, by which time Rwanda would have been up and running, of course. Now, I wonder whether Rishi was afraid of the same optics problem, that having a plane take off with 37 migrants in it is kind of worse than not having it. But if one doesn't take off at all, he can go, oh, I've been scuppered by the lawyers. But if broadcasters and the media start talking about how 37 people have been ejected, that's going to look terrible. And of course, had he called a later election, we would have begun to see Rwanda enacted. And maybe that's why he swerved it and went early. I don't know. You know more about that world than me.
I think the key difference, I mean, if I'm to go back to 2024, I think Rishi ultimately called the election. It's very depressing to say, because I think the Conservative Party just ran out of, I think it was a marathon runner, you know, just it's hit the wall and couldn't go on anymore. I think it really came down to that. On Rwanda, the key difference, though, is, you know, ultimately, in terms of a deterrent, if you're coming from France anyway, just being told you might get taken back, you probably won't, by the way, is hugely different as a deterrent and less effective than you're going to get put on a plane and sent to Rwanda on the other side of the world, actually.
That's a good point.
So I think there's a real difference there. I thought it was really good to see the Tories pledge that every single MP at the next election will have to sign up to the Tory party, will have to sign up to that pledge of leaving the ECHR. Yeah. That's what it's going to take. Labour will not do it. They will not do it. Yep. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. And it really is.
It's dreadful. And now we're seeing the manifestation of that dreadfulness when we can release figures like that 26 people are sent back at the same time, that 10,000 arrived. Oscar, stay with us. More stories still to come. Thoughts on Trump? Do you think he should win the Nobel Peace Prize next time around? Is he the greatest leader of modern times? Your assessment on that, what you think it means for the world, everybody's safety in that respect, and will these half-wits continue with their sort of anti-Israel protests, even though there is now a peace process up and running? Don't understand it. Why are they doing that? Thoughts on that? We are going to talk ID cards again, digital ID, because there's been another twist on that one. This was the ID card that was meant to only be about checking that you had the right to work here. And in, 2.5 weeks, we've discovered all manner of little tentacles to this plan. We'll bring you the latest in a couple of moments, right here on Talk.
The way to deal with it is quite simply to detain every single illegal immigrant securely behind wire until such time as we can return them to whence they came or they ask to go back. Now, that does require significant legal changes, but this government doesn't seem to want to be fair, neither did the previous, want to take those legal, do that legal amendment, withdraw from the ECHR and so on. They didn't want to do it. It was all too contentious for them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. One here says, how can you even say that Trump is a great leader? He is evil, a criminal, and most Americans are now seeing just how corrupt he is. Doing well in the opinion polls. This Gaza deal is a smokescreen for all of his evilness. Maybe it is that. Beck says what the world needs now is Trump, sweet Trump. It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful. China. We've got more where that came from. Oscar Redrop is also with us. We're looking at the big stories, including this one, Oscar, of course. This is a bit mad as well. Labour ID card scheme. Digital ID, of course, announced a couple of weeks back. This was about work permits, nothing else really. Then, yesterday, we discovered, well, it could be used for loads of other stuff, accessing benefits and all manner of ID checkage. And then today we learn that it could be rolled out to kids as young as 13. This looks like a very different digital ID to the one he told us about less than a month ago.
But isn't that exactly the point? I mean, the philosophical argument is that you allow a digital ID system like this to go through, and in, decades' time, we're all microchipped and et cetera, et cetera. Even within the month of the policy being announced to now, we're seeing how its powers could be used and extended beyond what was initially promised. I mean, children being forced to carry this is so vile, and has real repercussions, in terms of the state grabbing hold of how you parent. Maybe because you need a smartphone for a digital ID, maybe a parent doesn't want their kid to have a smartphone and be exposed to all these supposedly, well, not supposedly, but all these evil, horrible things that are out there on the internet that the Labour government supposedly care about so much that they restrict adults, legal adults, in terms of online verification and what they can and can't do. So it is, I would honestly urge all viewers and listeners to resist this, because, and I don't want to overcook it or get too carried away, because back in the day we didn't have numbers on our houses, and I'm sure when that was brought in, people really kicked off about it. Yeah. But this is different. This is a papers, please society. This is, and it's just like, do you out there, do you listeners and viewers, do you trust the centralised government that have cocked things up time and time and time again to look after all your data in one place like that? With no hacking, with no breaches, and ultimately, without sounding like I've got, the old tinfoil hat on too much, but do you trust your central government to use this data wisely, even on your behalf? Do you want them knowing everything you do and everything you are?
And of course, particularly,
it's vile.
and particularly this government, this Labour government, it was very much in that sort of Gordon Brown way. He was said, Gordon Brown's middle name was Spreadsheet. I swear it was. He loved an organised gateway system. It's all neatly in one place. There's a pop-up graph here. It tells you what you've done there. You know how many steps Billy at number 57 has taken that day. It means the state have got all the, the state love info on people, but you don't want governments to facilitate it. But the ideology of Keir and co is very much, they are much more comfortable when they have that information. They will say, of course, there's no nefarious reason for having it, but they run like this. That's how they believe government should be run, in this kind of super-duper neat, tidy, clipped, organised fashion.
That would be maybe passable and okay if they had shown any competence whatsoever that that they can manage that nice, neat, chunky spreadsheet way of governing. If they were really competent and driving and really getting amazing results for this country, maybe then people would be okay with it. But when it's just been incompetent mess after mess and no results and low productivity and a shocking economy, etc., 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 don't need to reel off the greatest hits. For them to be saying, actually, not just you, mate, but your kids, we're going to need your kids to we're going to need your kids digital ID.
Why?
Well.
Why do you want the kids' ID for? What the hell is wrong with you? You know, I'm a parent. I can sort my own kids out. I don't need the state to come in and somehow. But of course, if you are a statist mindset, and you know, the SNP in Scotland, I mean, took this to whole, as you know, to whole other levels of, you know, the state was almost a kind of a parallel parent to kids, and every child assigned almost a government parent role. I mean, just banana stuff. Let's briefly, Oscar, we haven't got long on this, but it's a good one to look at. Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, cracking down on what she calls Islamic separatism as it sets out a new law banning burqas, virginity tests and forced marriages. Let's have a listen to Reform MP Sarah Pochin. She spoke about the burqa in the UK. Here she is.
The first thing I should say was this question was not just an off-the-cuff question. I think it was well framed. It was carefully thought through. And of course, my colleagues sat next to me on the benches knew what I was going to ask. But it won't have escaped your notice, I'm sure, that in the short time I have been representing my constituents in Westminster, the briefs that I'm picking up are very much about public safety and about women's welfare. And those two issues are very much at the centre of this question. The burqa is a profoundly misogynistic item, in my view, and very offensive to our British culture.
There it is, Sarah Pochin's views. You may remember when she said all of that. It's always a debate, Oscar, that pops up from time to time. Your former boss, of course, had a thing or two to say about burqas in his Telegraph column. But nonetheless...
couldn't resist, could you?
I know. I wasn't intending to say, just something came to me. Because I think Boris, to be fair, simultaneously, in that column, which never gets talked about, he made the argument that he doesn't want the state to be banning things. So you might think something, which was the bit that got missed spectacularally. Yeah. And you can say, oh, you look like a letterbox, or it looks like this, or a bank robber, etc. But ultimately, we live in a liberal world. We don't want, we're just talking about ID cards and overreach from the state. Do we really want politicians saying you can wear that and not wear that?
Well, I people might start throwing stuff at their radios, but I'm uncomfortable with a ban like this. I just generally, out of principle, I get it. I think there probably are, maybe we could have a look at very specific circumstances in terms of public safety points where, you know, they should be taken off. But I think a ban, I'm really uncomfortable with that. You know, like you can't, like you said, you can't come down really hard on things like digital IDs and the government kind of controlling elements of our lives. And then even if you find something distasteful, you may even find it offensive. You might find it threatening in a way. But you can't expect the state, I don't think, to start telling people what they can and can't wear to a point. And I think this, for me personally, and people go, oh, that's exactly why we hate the Tories, you're so wet, blah, 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 blah. But it just sits uncomfortably for me.
And I think I've got a funny feeling Nigel Farage has never talked about banning the burqa either. I don't think on the same kind of libertarian, you know, sort of the state should butt out of things. I think he'd probably take that view that you've just given.
And to be frank as well, like to be, you know, like the dangerous elements of Islam that we have in this country, I don't actually think is women wearing burqas. to be frank.
Yeah. Whatever anybody thinks about the burqa, you can think you're allowed to think they look ridiculous. I happen to think when I walk into, some churches, I've seen vicars wearing all manner of strange guff and wondered whether there was a little bit of gentle cross-dressing going on there as well. So, I think we can all point to religious garb and the like and think it looks a bit odd, but banning it, that's a whole other thing. Listen, Oscar, I have to step in for time. Have an amazing weekend. Always great to get you on. Oscar Redrop with us, former advisor to Boris Johnson when he was the Prime Minister. Thoughts on all of that? Kids getting ID cards at 30, digital ID, your response on that. Donald Trump, should he win the next Nobel Peace Prize? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. So, the Donald Trump deal brokered this landmark ceasefire and that hopefully lasting peace between Israel and Hamas. That's how it's meant to look. Let's get a word from Maoz Inon, Israeli entrepreneur and peace activist, joining us from Nazareth in Israel. Maoz, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Give us your assessment. We're only a few hours in, of course, of this deal, what you think it looks like, and can it hold? Can it last?
Okay. First, Ian, thank you. It's amazing to be with you on your show. It's a great honor. Basically, this deal is what my siblings, the Israeli-Palestinian peace movement, and I myself are working for 2 years to stop the war and to start a negotiation that will lead us to a lasting peace. So I think it's an amazing achievement that was achieved thanks to international intervention and pressure over the Israeli extremist government and over Hamas. And it should be the first step. And if we, the civil society and the international community will keep the pressure going on, I think the potential for a lasting peace between the Israelis and Palestinians is about to happen. and I'm thrilled and I'm committed to this work.
And this is fabulous to hear. Of course, the real skill or the proof of all of this, getting the peace deal is one thing, keeping the peace is quite something else.
You are right, and this is exactly the work we've been doing in the last 2 years, creating coalition, creating a partnership. I would dare even to say creating brotherhood between Palestinian and Israelis, peacemakers and reconciliation experts, and we are here ready to do the very hard and difficult work on the ground to create a profound reconciliation process between the Israelis and the Palestinians, something that we have never tried or were courage enough to do before. Till now, we were only preparing to the next war, preparing to the next cycle of violence, and now it's time to end for once and for all the bloodshed, the fear, the hate, and starting a new path.
Netanyahu, I'm going to take a guess here, Meoz, is probably not your favorite leader, but he is the leader. Many people are suggesting that that needs to change. He's got a lot of pressure on him. Does Israel need someone else now to carry this through, or is Netanyahu the man to stay in place?
So in the last 2 years, I've been learning about conflict areas and conflict resolutions all over the world, even in a worse conflict than the Israeli-Palestinians that last longer and created more damage and casualties. And many times those who signed the peace treaties are those who only a day before were still warmongers and acting and creating war crime. So for me, it doesn't relevant who's going to sign the peace treaty and who is going to lead through this profound reconciliation efforts and process. And so this is what's important. I judge everyone by his policy and by his action, and not by his name or even what he said the day before. I care just how he's going to create a future and a reality that is based on the values of equality, of dignity, reconciliation for both people, because there is not going to be any peace and security, safety and security to one people without peace, security and safety to the other.
And what is your assessment of President Trump's role in this?
I think President Trump, at last, and it took him way too long, nearly a year since he got back to the office, to pressure the extremist Israeli government to stop the war. It could have done before under Biden administration, and it could even been done in Trump's first presidential.
In 2016, right?
In 2016, he could done it before. It's too late. It's too late for my parents. I lost my parents on October 7th. It's too late for so many of my childhood friends, and it's too late for so many Palestinians, 10,000 in the West Bank, in Gaza, and hundreds, if not thousands, in the West Bank. But it's not too late for many millions more. 14 million people, Israelis and Palestinians, live between the river to the sea in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in Israel. And I hope President Trump will continue with the pressure, because he proved now that he can force the Israeli government to do whatever is good for the Israeli people, and not what is good for the Israeli government, which for them they care only about bloodshed and sacrificing their own people, which is my parents and my friends.
Of course, and desperately sad to hear about your parents too, and I would imagine you would want to see a legacy of peace that would be a fitting tribute to all of those that died not just on October 7th, but in other elements of this protracted war as well.
Yeah, you could not phrase it any better. I want my parents to be a sacrifice for peace and not victims of war. That's the only way I, as a human being, as a son, will be able to justify our family loss and the tragedy that happened to us.
Do you sense then that Mr. Trump will be in line for a Nobel Peace Prize next year now?
I hope he will continue with his efforts and pressure regardless. But if he will be the American Prime Minister, who's securing a lasting peace between the Israelis and Palestinians, I will be the first one to nominate him for the Nobel Prize.
All right, Maoz, great to have you with us. Stay safe and thank you. Maoz Inon, Israeli entrepreneur and peace activist in Nazareth. Let's have a reminder then of Donald Trump. He's at the centre of all of this. I don't think he could have got a peace prize this year, although some say actually he could have done. There would have been a way of making it happen. I think the voting had closed, to coin a phrase. Maybe next year there could be something in on that. And of course, this not just this war that Donald Trump has solved, there's been previous ones. Let's have a listen. Don't believe me, believe the man himself. Here he is addressing the United Nations.
In a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, 2 of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. I ended 7 wars. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them.
It's actually quite hard to think of what the United Nations have done on anything, to be honest, but maybe that's another debate. Let's get a word from Lance Foreman, former MEP and businessman. Always good to speak with you, Lance. Only Donald Trump can talk in that kind of way, and it's that kind of, if you like, brutal way of speaking. I mean, some would say, you know, well, who talks about themselves like that? I don't really care about that, to be honest. He's the man whose name is on the tin, and it's as a result of him. Biden could have done this, as our last guest said, and didn't. That peace deal was on Biden's table back then, didn't do anything about it. But it took a kind of certain type of politician like Donald Trump to make it happen.
Yeah, well, that was obviously his sales pitch at the UN. But to be honest, my view, Ian, is not actually so much that he should have won the Nobel Peace Prize now. He should have won it in 2020 when he got the Abraham Accords signed. You know, that was a fundamental change in the Middle East, you know, building reconciliation between Arabs and the Israelis, and a warm peace. You know, Israel's had peace with Jordan and with Egypt for many years, but it was always a cold peace. This was a real warm peace. In schools now in Dubai, they teach Holocaust education. I mean, this is extraordinary. This is really positive. This is the way that eventually, if there is going to be peace in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians, it has to be a warm peace. There has to be de-radicalization. All those UNRWA schools where Palestinian kids have been taught to hate Jews and hate Israelis, that all has to end. So a lot has to change. But you know, he really made his mark back in 2020, and you know, they could have given him a delayed one from then, because he should have got it then.
Yeah. He's a hard guy to assess, isn't he, Trump, in many respects? Nobody disputes that. You know, I'd hate to have worked for Donald Trump. I'd imagine it would be really hard and desperately tricky. And I can't imagine what going into work would feel like on a day. I'm sure he's got standards and all the rest of it. But simultaneously, I mean, there is... And I don't know if there's a word for this. You know, some people are getting in touch saying they absolutely loathe this guy, but are admiring this particular aspect of what has happened, and that's fair enough. We're a democracy. You can have what opinion you like. But it is quite, you know, bearing in mind the multifaceted personality that Donald Trump has, and, you know, he switches around a little bit here and there, it is hard to kind of assess him, as it were.
Personally, I don't find it hard to assess him at all. I actually think he's very predictable. He doesn't have a typical bureaucratic or even political mindset, but he has the mindset of a businessman. And I suppose being a businessman, you sort of understand how he tries to sort of manipulate situations to suit. But, you know, if you look at speeches and interviews that he's done over the last 30 to 40 years, nothing's changed. He is very predictable. He says the same stuff now that he was saying 30 years ago. You know where this guy's coming from, but he's just very clever in the way he deals with people. he treats every negotiation like it's a deal.
Yeah.
You have to give a bit, take a bit to manipulate things to the result that you want to achieve, and he's the master of that. And the Middle East is such a complex area. He's been able to achieve something that no one else has been able to achieve. And certainly in the last 2 years, this war should have ended. It should never have started. In fact, it started because, it goes back to the Abraham Accords.
Sure.
The Saudis were keen to join. The Saudis were keen to build a rapport and, with Israel. And the Iranians wanted to stop that, and they did via their proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah. That's why this thing happened. And if the Saudis do that deal with Israel, this is a game changer for the world. This is not two countries signing a deal. This is Jerusalem and Mecca. This is Islam and Judaism signing a deal.
Yeah.
It is a game changer for the world. It undermines all those hate preachers that, spreading, anti-Semitism in Britain, in Europe, in the West. If Islam and Judaism have made peace.
Just on that point, Lance, we'll have to be brief on this, but isn't it bizarre that these, what they call pro-Palestinian protests, although they're really anti-Jew or anti-Israel protests, as I see them, apparently they're going to continue for some bizarre reason. What the hell's wrong with these people?
It's not bizarre at all, Ian. These were never pro-Palestinian marches. These were anti-Semitic hate marches. Yes, there might have been some sort of useful idiots along that don't really understand what's going on here. But at the end of the day, this is and was anti-Semitism, and it's really there was a rally outside Downing Street last night, an anti-Semitism rally where, in fact, one of your colleagues, Julia, spoke. But the genie is out the bottle, and we need to deal with this. Even if there is peace now, and this deal goes ahead, and the hostages are released. And then the Israelis and Palestinians sort of work something out, hopefully long-term, not just temporary. We've still unleashed this genie of anti-Semitism in Britain. And there's so much that needs to be done with education, with the media. The BBC have been playing this awful game for 20 years now. I mean, it's been really appalling. But two-tier policing, a lot needs to happen. And we really need action from the government, not just kind words.
Sounds like you might be back in politics soon, Lance. That was a great speech.
Well, I've never really been out. I'm always there in the background.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, but I'm talking about, that seat at Westminster maybe come the next election.
Oh, I don't know. Still got a business to run in.
That's very true. That's very successfully too. Lance, always good to speak. Thank you, Lance Foreman, former MEP and businessman. Thank you to him. Over to you. 03444991000. Donald Trump, is he the man to save the world? Should he get the Nobel Peace Prize next year as a result of this? Digital ID as well. Want calls and comments on that too. Lines are open. This is Talk.
go back. Now, that does require significant legal changes, but this government doesn't seem to want to be fair, neither did the previous, want to take those legal, do that legal amendment, withdraw from the ECHR and so on. They didn't want to do it. It was all too contentious for them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Cheryl says, I think Netanyahu should get a lot of credit. He's weakened Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran. He has shown Qatar and Iran that he will do what needs to be done. He also said that to end the war, Hamas had to give back all the hostages and disarm. This war could have ended 2 years ago, says Cheryl. And in fact, Lance Foreman said it probably could have ended 8 years ago. But we are where we're at right now. Margaret in Birmingham, well done, Mr. President. We salute you. Yes, he should have won the Nobel Peace Prize, without a doubt. And he'll also keep trying for Ukraine. He's the greatest leader of modern times. Well done, says Margaret. Mark is in Glasgow. What are you making of it, Mark? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Well, I think Donald Trump is an example of a leader with strategic thinking who takes on the nasties, the big boys, the nutters, and creates peace through strength. He demonstrated that by bombing the nuclear facilities of Iran, and I think the Iranians thought, oh, hell, now we're in trouble. Yeah. And I think that if he's shown he's prepared to go to that length, it makes the nutters back off. It makes them realise they maybe can't get away with it. I think our European leaders, Starmer, etc., could all learn from this in relation to Ukraine and Putin. Peace by appeasement does not ever work. I believe that's what they tried with Hitler, and look where that got us. So, yeah.
It's a fair point. Do you sense that this is going to last? There's the bigger question, I suppose, Mark.
I think the only way it's going to last is if the UNRWA-funded, United Nations-funded schools that teach the Holocaust never existed, that the Zionists, as they like to call them, the Jews, the Israelis, are endlessly trying to kill their people. If these people are stopped and they get proper education so they're not indoctrinated from childhood, then you should be okay.
I like it. Mark, thank you very much indeed for that. That's Mark in Glasgow. This is Matt in Cheshire. Fire away, Matt. Afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian. As you know, I've been a Trump fan since the beginning. I've not just jumped on the bandwagon as a lot have. I was watching some of the coverage in America last night, and some of the Democrat senators were being sort of forced to answer questions about whether or not he's done a good thing, and they were literally almost vomiting, having to say positive things about him. It's got to the stage now where people are actually thinking, was I wrong all along? Is he a good statesman? Yeah. Is he a better politician than everyone I've known for the last 50
It's a tricky one, isn't it, for those who oppose him? What are they meant to say if you've just got a big old peace deal? Democrats having to force themselves for a positive comment.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if he's done exactly what all these people have been whinging about for 2 years. And now I think Greg Gutfeld again summed it up. They're going to have to change the placard. They have to find something else to put on the placards now. It's gone from COVID to BLM to Palestine. Yep. What's the new issue now that these agitators are going to put on their placards?
It's a good point. What's going to be on the placard this week? I love it. Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. Stuart says maybe President Trump could influence the UK Education Authority to stop brainwashing them and our kids to hate British culture and hate Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It's a good point. I mean, I've said this a ton of times, particularly in the last couple of months, probably since this Labour government got in, but it does predate them, because the Tory government, Rishi Sunak, was sort of cut from the same cloth as a kind of Keir Starmer-y, Yvette Cooper, Lammy type, pre-prepared statements, all nice and clinical, no fire in the pit of their belly, no real anger or metal or grit to what they've got to say. That's the kind of politics we need right now in the 21st century. Is Trump the man? Is he the greatest leader of our times? Lines are open. More calls from you coming after the news at 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Loads to get through. We are, of course, talking about Donald Trump declaring there will be an everlasting peace in Gaza as Israel ratified that ceasefire plan to bring home last surviving hostages to end the war. So all of that is very positive. However, the so-called pro-Palestinian groups in the UK plan to continue their protest, which rather tells you what this is really all about. We've always called it out for what it is: anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, call it whatever you like. But we know what they're about, and they don't want to stop. Why would they not stop? There's peace. There's just been surely that would be the moment you would literally stop. Not these guys, because that's not really what they're all about. We've got their number. Also this afternoon, fake Taliban death threats letters are being used to deceive the Home Office in Afghan asylum claims. This is unreal. This was a Telegraph investigation. It's revealed how corrupt officials in Afghanistan produced these letters for a fee. One undercover reporter obtained 3 fake documents for 40 quid. So you get your document which says that you are under threat. You are going to be put to death by the Taliban if you go back. And then they tell it to the Home Office over here when they're applying for asylum. For 40 quid. Also this afternoon, Labour's digital ID saga continues with potential expansion to kids as young as 13 years old. Labour has praised India's biometric system as a model where over 1.1 billion people have digital ID. That's where we're at so far. More on that and, of course, your comments along the way. 0344 499 1000. We'll come to the one-in, one-out debacle in just a second. Back to that issue that Sarah Poach... Well, in fact, it's the Prime Minister of Italy who's raised this idea of getting rid of the burqa and all sorts of other issues that she believes spark separatism which is essentially is true. I don't know how far you go down that path. If you're a full libertarian, do you want your country or your government to ban stuff you wear? Now, you can think certain things look ridiculous. There's a lot of things I think look ridiculous. Our producer, Finn, comes into work and nearly always looks a bit ridiculous. But I don't want to ban anything that he wears. Those flipping jeans he bought the other week, I bet you they haven't been worn since, Finn, have they? These things were as wide as the flipping Mersey. You've never seen anything like it. I don't know. He's like a size... What do you waist? About 30? 32? You 32 as well? I'm 32. How's that? There you go. Yeah, he's a 32 waist. He bought a pair of jeans that were about a 44. Were about that, weren't they? I'm not kidding you. And he wore them. Unbelievable. I don't want to ban them. Anyway, on that point, Nigel Brown says, afternoon, Ian, great show. Some Muslim countries have banned face coverings on women for reasons including national security, preventing terrorism and extremism, upholding cultural values and promoting secularism, and a woman's participation in public life. Brackets, symbol of oppression. Although I don't think it's a vote changer personally, I'd rather see people making Britain their home, embracing British values. These garments are foreign to our national culture and likely sending feminism and the protection of women's rights backwards. Britain was better once upon a time. Many of us remember those times, but more and more never lived through them. It needs to be better again. We all need a happy ending. We certainly do. Good point, Nigel. Thank you very much indeed for that. Someone who I don't think is going to get a happy ending is going to be Keir Starmer if he carries on at this rate with his one-in, one-out policy, because here's how it's looking so far. The data is in. We almost need a drum roll. How many people have been sent back, not to their country of origin, but back to France, under Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out migrant scheme? I know you're already familiar with this information, but for those who aren't, this is rather interesting. 26 migrants have been returned to France. 26 migrants have been returned to France, and at the same time, 10,000 have arrived in Britain. It is something from a satire, right? 10,000, you can hear it in an episode of Yes Minister or The Thick of It or House of Cards or any of those kind of areas where you'd go, well, Prime Minister, we've got a problem. How many have gone out? Well, 26. How many have come in? Well, it's a larger number, Prime Minister. No, tell me how many. Well, it's more than 26. OK, what are we talking? 36? 50? Come on, tell me. 10,000, Prime Minister. 10,000? That's a system that isn't working. Let's speak to Orla Minihane, Reform UK candidate for Epping. Orla, good afternoon to you. I mean, you don't even have to know loads about politics, do you, to work out that this has gone, well, to put it in the politer fashion, belly up.
Yes. So thank you for having me. I live and breathe this, Ian. I'm obsessed. I spend my days ranting at people about these numbers. And let's get this into perspective. So 10,000 since our new Home Secretary came into her role, 1,075 on Wednesday, 1,075 men on Wednesday. That is 8 times the Bell Hotel in Epping that we stand outside and protest about. So 8 hotels, right? It is insanity. And since Labour came into power, 58,000 men have crossed the channel illegally. That is 3 times the capacity of the O2. That's how many people we're talking. It is lunacy. And I just don't understand how in any shape or form this government aren't looking, thinking we are so out of control, we've completely lost any kind of control of our borders. It's insanity, absolute insanity.
It's almost to the point, it's kind of played a trick with our mind in a weird way, hasn't it? Because the numbers are so big, and I read it out yesterday when the numbers came through for how many had crossed on Wednesday, and it was over 1,000 in 15 boats in one day. And because we've seen these figures so often, on a daily basis throughout the summer, looking as bad as this, We've kind of stopped. It's almost so shocking that it's gone into another. I don't even know if there's a name for it in kind of psychology. It's gone into another phase, sort of where we're beyond shocked. We're something else.
It's like the Twilight Zone. It's like the Twilight Zone. It's like a bad film.
Someone's joking with us here. Clearly, what, 1,000 blokes on a boat? Really? Yes, seriously. Almost every day.
Every day. And the thing is, you know, if you look at the last 20 years, okay, so obviously this has got progressively worse as time's gone on. The percentage of rape has gone up by 800% in 20 years. 800%. We are now the rape capital of Europe, and that is a fact. We have got more rapes and sexual assaults in this country than anywhere in Europe. Now, people will say to me, you know, the usual rhetoric, oh, you're racist, you're a bigot, you're this, that, and the other. It is a fact. The top 5 nationalities of sexual assaults are Afghanistan, Eritrea, Nairobi, Chad, Sudan, Congo. These are all men that are coming in, unvetted men that are coming into this country. Women and children are being put at risk daily. And that is a fact. That's not bigotry. That is a fact. And even if you put that aside and the risk around putting unvetted men in towns and communities across the country, there is no room. There is simply no room and no money.
I heard somebody just this week on another radio station saying, well, it's only a small percentage. OK, let's take that as fact, a small percentage. I don't want the small percentage. I don't want to take that risk and go, well, it might, in this particular boat, it might only be 0.5%. In that boat, it might be 5%. In that boat, it might be 10. I don't want to play that game with people's lives. I mean, yeah, I'm sure the average person is not a rapist, but I don't know. I don't know who they are. I don't know. The police don't know who they are. The government don't know who they are. What the hell are we doing?
And I mean, the thing is, there was an article that was in the Times a couple of weeks ago, or the Telegraph, forgive me, one or the other, of a lady that's a journalist who'd spent 20 years documenting Calais and what was happening with migrants in Calais. And she says that there are thousands of men now in Calais who have been expelled from countries in Europe because they've committed a crime or because their asylum has failed. So let's all go to Calais and let's all get on a boat and come to the UK. Why do we want these men? These are the engineers and the doctors and the scientists and all the wonderful people that the government has said are coming and going to culturally enrich our country. Yeah. These are criminals. We are inviting, our borders are wide open and we are inviting criminals in. And these men are coming in and fact, they are assaulting and hurting our children and women. It's a crime on humanity, and I'm sorry that sounds dramatic, but it is a crime against women and children of this country. It has got to stop.
And that's, you know, what you've just said there is very powerful stuff, and nobody's disputing any of that, Orla, but that's just one aspect of the problem. We could go on here. There's a big pie chart. I mean, we could look at the finances. I mean, I've often said it, even if you didn't believe, you know, that there are bad people in these boats, then just look at the finances. What are we up to, £7 million a day to house people? We can't afford that. We can't afford that.
Correct. We're a tiny island. We've got no housing. We've got no infrastructure. You can't see a doctor. You can't get a school place for your children. It is absolutely it's absolute insanity that this has been allowed to happen. And the fact is, we've got now coming into winter, we've got pensioners that can't pay for their heating to go on. We've got veterans on the streets. We've got single mothers living in mouldy bedsits. Yet these men are coming in thousands and thousands at a time. It just does. It's insanity. How the government can go in and think every day that they are serving this country is absolutely beyond me.
It's a great point. A great point. Another one in the pie chart, of course, is social cohesion. I don't know what anybody thinks 20,000 non-English speaking, non-skilled Afghans are going to bring to the UK. The answer is nothing whatsoever.
Right.
I'm sure they're very nice people. If you broke bread with their family, they'd be very welcoming. But that's not the point, right? I mean, what are we doing? Why are we playing this game?
I don't know. And every day, every time I, get up and I read some of the news, or I watch talkTV, or I speak to people, and we hear more and more stories and more numbers, as you say, it becomes like you're just in this bad dream. And you talk to people and everybody says the same thing. What is going on? And do you know what? What is the end game? Because we hear that there's going to be a general election in 2029, or Nigel Farage says probably 2027. Can we wait that long? In all honesty, can we wait that long? I don't think we can. I think the country is going to implode.
By 2020, based on the current projections, I mean, nearly 60,000 since Keir Starmer came into office. Nearly 60,000. Again, I keep saying to people, let that figure settle. I know I always give this example, although I haven't given it for a few months now. If 60,000 people jumped over the barriers at Heathrow Airport, you know, the world's press will be flying around in helicopters going, oh, my God, you won't believe what's just happened. But you do it in a boat across the channel and no one seems to say a word. That figure's going to double or treble by the time there's another general election. And if you count in all the other people before this 60,000, then we're talking, you know, we're getting to the sort of, by 2029, we'll be near the 500,000 stage. And that's just people on the channel. That's just one method.
How about the ones that are coming in on the back of boats and coming in via different, or ones that have come here and haven't left? And I mean, if this was in any other time in history, and there were, if you put them all in one big group of 60,000 men, for example, on the shores of France, that would be called an invasion. Yeah. That would be called an invasion. Simple. So why is it not being dealt with? I can't comprehend it.
And I think most of our listeners will be absolutely with you on that. Orla, thank you as ever for your time. Really appreciate it. Orla Minihane is a Reform UK candidate for Epping. Thank you to her. Over to you. On this very point, Chris joins us from Epsom. 1 in, 1 out, Chris, or actually it's 26 out, 10,000 in, so not really working out that well. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Ian. It's even worse than that. And if all are still listening, good afternoon to her and Sarah. I met them at conference.
Nice.
And actually, I've known Sarah from 30 years ago as well. Anyway, back to the point.
Yeah.
Okay, go back. We've got to take a step back, Ian, because these numbers are only the current numbers that you're talking about. Go back to when Theresa May was Home Office Minister.
Mm-hmm. Home Secretary, yeah.
Home Secretary. She announced 1.2 million overstayers in 2014. Mm-hmm. Everything you're talking about has been added to that. That's a detail that's being missed out.
Good point.
The other details that are being missed out is it's not 1 out, 1 in, and it's not the silly numbers you say. It's worse. Right, the one that came in, the first one that came in with his wife and child, that counted as 1, not 3. Yeah. Because they're vetted. Don't know what vetting goes on, but because they're vetted, he gets refugee status or independent leave to remain.
And can bring a partner.
He can bring his partner and immediate children. So that's why it only counts as 1. Now, the worst bit, the 26 we've sent back, do you know that the British government are paying for their accommodation and food to the French?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, there's a financial contribution for that. In fact, we pay really for the whole thing. I think this is Macron. I think Macron's just done a favour to... Well, it's not a favour because it's ridiculous, but I think he just did this because Starmer asked him and said... Because this plan, as I'm sure you're aware, Chris, the 1 in, 1 out, was on the Home Office, Home Secretary and the Prime Minister's desk under the Tories, and they looked at it and went, this is going to look terrible because what's likely to happen is precisely what has happened, Chris. So they rejected it on that basis, but Starmer ran with it. And I think Macron just went, yeah, all right, if you want to do that, it's fine. You'll have to pay for all the bits and pieces, but we'll do it for you. I can't think of any reason because it defies all logic.
It defies all logic. It's just a con, right? It's just slippery politics.
Yeah,
that's all it is. Now, the two people that need to be listened to is Henry Bolton, all right, who knows this stuff inside out and has dealt with countries and has talks absolute sense. And the other one is Philip Ingram. There is enough MOD land, all right, to put fences up, right, razor wire fences, tents which are UN compatible with refugees. We can build ablution blocks. We take all of them, the ones that are in hotels, the ones that are landing, and they go into a detention camp. End of story. They then either are vetted, if we can't vet them, if we can't prove, not to a reasonable degree, or they got this bit of paper from Afghanistan that says the Taliban's going to kill them, right? If we cannot absolutely identify them, all right, They stay in the detention camp until they say they want to go home.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see anything wrong with that. As you say, we'd be treating people with dignity. They would have food. They would have a roof over their head. They would have, as you say, a place to shower and use as facilities in that respect. So we do it all by the UN book, if you like. You said
Correct.
it there. Why it's not happened, I don't know, Chris. I tell you, well, I do know, and thank you, Chris, for the call, by the way, because politicians cannot bear or deal with the word camp, especially detention camp. It's got echoes of something to them. Even though you might ask our military personnel to live in that sort of situation, which they're quite relaxed about that. But the minute that any immigrants are kind of in something that's called a detention camp or centre or whatever, it's got a combination of those words in it, they lose their minds. They're just not comfortable with it because they think they're somehow not adhering to, you know, decency and human rights and treating people well. I've always been an advocate. If we want to play a kind of moral high ground game, then I've always been an advocate. I think most people are. You do treat people with decency. I don't want to starve anyone, beat anyone, or anything like that. I just want to make sure I know who's in my country, who they are, where they came from. If I can't establish that, I'm afraid they'd have to be returned from where they came. There's a big game being played here. We know there's a big game being played. It's a multi-million, billion-pound industry, this whole immigration malarkey. And of course, yep, I'll say it again because you sort of have to in case somebody tries to call you out on it. Yes, we want to help people who are desperate and escaping tyrannical regimes. I just don't believe, on all the evidence I see on this, that those floating over the English Channel on a daily basis, I don't believe they fit that criteria. Speaking of boat migrants, small boat migrant Fayez Khan. This is the 26-year-old who was in court where Nigel Farage gave evidence. He was in court because of threats to kill Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader. This was in a TikTok post that he did last year. You might remember the story. He loved a bit of TikTok, this fellow, which is kind of bizarre. This is meant to be a very vulnerable person, but he's monkeying around on flipping TikTok, making kill videos about Farage. Anyway, he's just been found guilty at Southwark Crown Court of making threats to kill. Do you remember he had the gun tattoo on the cheek? He had all of that going on. This was a horrible bit of work. I would imagine I think you'd probably go to jail, don't you, for threats to kill? I think you probably would. But who knows in this weird world? The problem with that, of course, is that we will be paying for his incarceration. So it's bittersweet in that respect. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Now, that does require significant legal changes, but this government doesn't seem to want to be fair, neither did the previous, want to take those legal, do that legal amendment, withdraw from the ECHR and so on. They didn't want to do it. It was all too contentious for them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. This one from Sean in Cowden, in Kent. So where's Cowden? I thought I grew up in Kent. I thought I knew everywhere in Kent. Where is Cowden in Kent? Finn is diligently looking that up right now. Cowden in Kent. Let me think. I think it's probably somewhere. Where would it be near? Cowden. Anyway, while we're looking that up, Sean says, good afternoon, Ian. With regards to the proposed ID cards, what ID will you need to apply for an ID card? Whatever it is, why don't we just use that as an ID? It's a very good point. You've got to, and also you've got to have a phone for this. What if you haven't got a phone? Apparently it's a village in the Sevenoaks district, which is literally where I live. Cowden, wow, really? Southwest of Tunbridge. So it's that way. Hillingborough way, I'm guessing. Do I know Claydene, Finn? I don't know Claydene, no. There's so many tiny little villages around that neck of the woods. That's obviously one of them. So it's probably about 10 minutes from where I live. By Hever Castle is that neck of the woods, so south of Hever Castle. I'm sure this is of great interest to everybody. Bob in Arbroath is going, oh, thank you very much for that info. Now I know where Cowden is. I'll go there for the weekend with the kids. Let's go to Kevin, who's not in Cowden, but he's in Basingstoke, which is in Hampshire. Good afternoon to you, Kevin. Well, he was there. Maybe he's legged it.
Ian.
Oh, you are there.
I'll make a quick... I've phoned up about Trump, but...
Yeah.
No, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear now.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear us?
All right. Yeah. All right. Okay. I think you have to have photo ID to get the ID cards. I think you have to, download your passport or something to get it. But anyway,
so you've got to provide them with legitimate ID to get the ID.
You don't. Yeah, which sounds ridiculous, doesn't it?
Completely.
Trump is not. You can't. You're not a great leader just because you do one great thing, are you?
True.
I mean, after the January the 6th riots, when he came into power for the second time, he released those people, and they caused the death and serious injury to a lot of people. And, I mean, one of the people that he released went on to get behind the wheel when he was drunk and killed a 24-year-old woman and seriously injured her partner. So I don't think she would say he's a great person, do you?
I 100% agree with that. And I said at the beginning, I've said throughout the show, about this curious sort of multifarious elements to this man's personality and his way of doing things. So pardoning the January the 6th rioters, I find quite unbelievable that he would do. He was making a statement about that. He didn't really care about democracy. He was making a statement. And that's, to me, I think, you lose a lot of house points, Mr. Trump, for that. And I know that people go, well, nobody actually did. The people that died for, they didn't die in a riot, they didn't shoot. That doesn't wash. It was just not a good look. So, yes, you're right. It's a bit like, I suppose, Kevin, if, you know, the local burglar who'd done 38 houses in your road, but then one day rescued your dog that was drowning in a pond, do you shake his hand?
Well, yeah, I mean, look at Jimmy Savile. He raised a hell of a lot of money. But do you say he's a great man because he raised a lot of money?
Well, you see that, yeah, and the world is full of those. I know that's.
I mean, I'm not comparing Trump.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. It's the kind of curious way on how we judge people and what we do about people who've got an underbelly of, you know, absolute horror, but simultaneously sometimes do something nice. You know, if Harold Shipman invented and I'm not trying to be smart saying this, Harold Shipman invented, you know, a way of the elderly living longer or something like that, if he'd lived himself and did you know, would people go, oh yeah, good old Harold, he spent the rest of his life researching a new compound that meant the elderly get another 10 years. And you think, well, yeah, but this is the man that was a serial killer of old people. How would you judge that? How would you judge that? Now, you're right, we don't compare Trump to all of that, but it is the kind of curious wrestling, I suppose, we all do when we try and assess flawed characters. And I don't think Trump would run away or shy away from being referred to as a flawed character, because, you know, some of our greatest geniuses over the years have been deeply flawed. Some of the greatest creators, whether they're writers, music artists, whatever, have been, you know, horror stories to live with or work for, etc., but produce good stuff. So what do we do with that? Kevin, your phone line has got like a 28-minute delay on it for some bizarre reason, so I'm going to thank you for the call. That was great to raise that specific point as well. Doing one great thing as a leader, does that make you a great leader? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 25 to 3. Now, the NHS is in crisis. I think we've had that headline for Lord knows how long. This is despite Rachel Reeves's £25 billion funding boost, with waiting lists hitting 7.41 million and nearly 45,000 patients enduring corridor care just last month. That has not gone away, that story. Labour's £450 million urgent care plan faces staff strike threats, while the Treasury demand cuts to fund pay rises. I mean, the miserable list goes on. Sam Blanchard is with us, health correspondent at The Sun. Good to see you, Sam. I mean, this is kind of never-ending story, isn't it, really, the NHS? I mean, we could probably have this conversation 20 years ago and it would have sounded pretty similar. It's never... I don't think we're ever going to get to a point when I'll say, oh, Sam's with us in the studio with some breaking news, and you tell us, oh, the NHS has solved all of its crisis. It's never going to happen.
Not in my lifetime, I don't think. Yeah, you're right. It's been every year since I started covering the beat 8 years ago. It's always, you know, we're not treating people quick enough, people are waiting too long, and it just seems to keep happening. I think the problem is the NHS is so big, it's huge, it's... You know, there's more than 1 million people working in it. It's all these different, hundreds of different organisations. Making any change just takes years and years, and you keep changing what the plans are, and you never see them through to fruition, I think.
And it's interesting, so somebody like Wes Streeting comes in and, you know, in opposition, and since he's been Health Secretary, but, you know, certainly in opposition, you know, what he was going to do, and he's a younger face, and he's, you know, clearly a bright guy. To many people, even if they're not Labour supporters, you know, Wes was sort of the acceptable face of Labour and all that business. I'm sure he's got some great ideas, and I'm sure he lays in bed thinking, oh, I've got a good idea. I'm sure he reads all about different health systems around the world. Why don't we just do that? But as you rightly say, Sam, I mean, having the idea and putting it into action are two different things. And when you've got probably, you know, 50,000 bosses in different departments, and there's no one kind of area, and it's all split up. It's like turning an oil tanker around.
Yes.
Just to change the supplier of the rubber gloves or something.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Wes Streeting is being dynamic, or appears to be, and they've got these great ideas. You know, we want to modernise the NHS, we want to take care out of hospitals and take it closer to people. They're putting these plans in place, but what we're seeing, as you were saying, the statistics, the data are still, you know, they're not moving, or they're still going in the wrong direction. Is incremental improvements, and that's stuff that's baked in 6 months, a year ago, so it really takes time for these things to feed through. And I think for the staff on the ground, their problem is, that's a great idea for 6 months' time, a year's time. There's someone at the door right now bleeding. I need to fix that, and there's a split really there between the frontline pressure and the dream for the future, really.
And of course, it's not just a case of, because I think there was a few months ago when it appeared that the waiting list had gone down a little bit, and there was great jubilation. I'm sure the Department for Health all went out on a Beano that weekend going, hey, we're doing it, it's happening, and then the next set of stats come out, oh no, it's gone back up again. And this game is played constantly. I remember David Cameron, when he was in opposition, actually, and going to a lobby sort of after dinner thing, where it was lunch actually, and he gave a speech, and he was talking about the economy, he was talking about poverty, and he was talking about health, and he said we sort of live in this world where we sort of artificially move one group just over the line, but you don't fundamentally solve the problem. So we can have these moments, and I'm sure in the next year there'll be some news that the waiting list gone down a bit, but then it might go up a bit. Fundamental change isn't really happening, and that's the point, isn't it? It needs something bigger than just a few sort of moving somebody from one group to another, or taking them off that database and putting them... Something bigger has got to happen.
Yes.
Is anyone thinking big? As Wes Streeting said he was thinking.
They're trying, big. And again, it's easy to think big. Is it easy to do big? No, I think it's much harder. And for everything you improve, the demand is constantly increasing. I mean, the hospital bosses were saying yesterday, this has been the busiest summer, we've done the most procedures, we've done the most scans, still more people are coming, you know, pouring through the doors. How do you cope? You can improve it, but they're always going to come. Everybody's getting older, we're living longer with more health conditions. You just keep showing up, things keep going wrong, and the demand, unless we can keep people healthier at home, keep them out of hospital, improve access to GPs and pharmacies, then they will keep showing up at
I remember Wes Streeting telling me that, you know, in some places it's just a case of another scanning machine, or, you know, and this is true, isn't it? You know, you go to some hospitals and you think they've got everything, every machine that could go ping on planet Earth in the world of medicine is there, and some places don't have the machinery, you think, and obviously if they had an extra one or two, then immediately, and obviously you've then got to get people to know how to work them, etc., but immediately you can see a difference. So I fear sometimes, and I have no evidence for this, Sam, but you can sort of pilot some areas and go, well, you know, in that area in Northumberland or over there in the southwest, numbers did come down for certain procedures, and that's good, but you've got to do that across the country all the time.
Yes, I think
there's the challenge.
Wes Streeting's sort of his big dream is to make the good bits of the NHS, you know, the standard. And I think what you say is right. You can buy all the shiny new machines in the world, but if you don't have enough people to run them, you can't get the patients through. And the NHS doesn't have enough staff in a lot of groups. Probably most staff groups are underfilled. And the ones they do have are unhappy. They're burnt out, they're overworked, they're rowing about pay constantly, they're always threatening to strike or actually going on strike, and it's just a constant battle of attrition, I think.
Yeah, totally. Is this just about money, though? Is it just... We hear it all the time, even under the last Tory government. I think they talked about record money going into health. I know it depends on how you measure it. I think probably more money per capita went in under probably the Blair years, I would imagine, because they did throw a lot of cash at it. But did we see manifest improvement?
I think we did then, but the NHS does have a habit of absorbing all the money that you throw at it quite quickly. And as we've seen a number of reviews that the efficiency is not good enough, the productivity is not good enough, the government are saying we're not just going to keep throwing money at you endlessly, you need to do more with the money that you've got, you need to find new ways of working. And that's, you know, they're very stuck in their ways, a lot of them, and making them change is going to be difficult, and it's going to take a lot of time.
I've never understood this, and I'm pretty sure if I said this to, you know, the permanent secretary or the health secretary in those they go, do you think we haven't thought about that? Yeah, I look at, you know, you look at countries that have got better health outcomes. Why do we not just go, I mean, let's go, Spain, for example, are doing, as I understand it, the last time I was looking, pretty much better than we are in so many areas. That would have been unthinkable 20 years ago in Spain. Why don't we go, right, whoever's got the best one, let's do that. Let's just do that.
Yeah. It's it's easy to say that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But like I say, it's this monolithic thing that you can't just change tack suddenly. There's people flooding through the door. You can't say, right, we're not going to do it that way anymore. We're going to stop everything we were doing, and we're just going to start like this tomorrow.
Oh, not again. You can imagine the stuff, we've done that so many times, we're going to change again, and the memo goes round. But I think it is, what, the second or third biggest employer in the world or something, isn't it? Which is, you know, tells you quite a lot. I don't know how anybody's meant to manage that.
No. And, yeah, I don't envy the person who does.
Yeah. We'll watch with it. It won't be the last time we speak, Sam, but thank you for being with us. Sam Blanchard is, of course, health correspondent at The Sun. Thank you to him. Let's get a word from Thorin Govind, pharmacist and healthcare expert. Thorin, good afternoon. Nice to speak with you again.
Nice to see you, Ian. We're always, last time we spoke, I think we were talking about vaping. Now we're obviously talking pharmacy again, which is fantastic.
Indeed. Are you finding, because I think since the last time I spoke, and I was just racking my brains while I was talking to Sam, not that I wasn't hanging off every one of Sam's words there, but I was thinking ahead that we're about to speak. Since we last spoke, I saw a pharmacist. I got something checked, and it sounds a bit weird, and I can't remember what it was, so it can't have been that important, but I remember thinking, oh, I've got to make a doctor's appointment. No, and I walked past my pharmacist. I literally just walked in and said, could I see the pharmacist? This woman came out and said, yep, no problem at all, come with me. Went into a little room. I think she looked into my eye or something like that and said, no, you haven't gone blind, don't worry, everything's fine. Walked out, banged my head on a wall. I didn't do that bit, but it was nice to know that there was another option than going to the GP. And that ties in, really, doesn't it, with what we're talking about here, in terms of you guys, and I'm assuming in the last, you know, certainly the last few years, but certainly the last year, have you been busier in that area than you ever have been?
Yes, and we had the fantastic Pharmacy First scheme, which has been launched for a little while now, and that's enabled us to support more people. So there are strict criteria, but things like impetigo, infected insect bites, shingles, sore throats, and for women especially, uncomplicated urinary tract infections, it's a lifesaver to be able to go and walk into your pharmacy without needing an appointment.
It is interesting, and of course it took years, well, not years, but I mean, there were lots of people saying, well, why don't we, utilise the expertise of pharmacists? Now it's become more of a thing. Is the problem that almost like it's sort of the woman's handbag scenario? The bigger you make it, you're always still going to fill it, aren't you? So it's always going to be rammed. So you can open up another pharmacist, you can open up another GP surgery, you can open up another hospital, and people, as Sam was just saying, people still take up those places, it seems. It's almost like a never-ending conundrum, this.
I think one of the biggest challenges, we are still struggling with funding in pharmacy. So the price that we pay to get medications into the building is not adding up with what the NHS is paying us. We are doing everything we can to support our local communities, but that does impact staffing levels because the services that we do, we don't know how many people with a sore throat are going to walk through our doors each month. We can roughly guess based on the last month how many prescriptions we're going to have to do. And I think people are becoming impatient, and we're definitely dealing with more abuse. And I think the time, if you think about the wait time to see your pharmacist compared to if you needed to make a phone call to the GP and then get offered an appointment and then travel to the GP, I do think what we offer is unrivaled. It's, access to a trained healthcare professional. And it's not just that, but also I may say to you, actually, this is something you don't need to worry about so much, or it is actually something we need you to be seen more urgently with. And I think that reassurance and triage point, again, is very, very helpful on the high street.
Yeah, I genuinely had, I've just remembered, it was my throat, actually. I had a swollen tonsil, so that's why I nipped in. And it was incredibly reassuring. She looked into my throat, got a little torch pen out and had a little look and moved my tongue to one side and said, yeah, it's this, gargle with X, Y and Z, and everything was sorted. As I walked out, Thorin, this is absolutely true, I genuinely had a skip in my step because I thought I haven't taken a place at a GP surgery where somebody who's got far more pressing issues than me with, the legacy of man flu, as it were, and I know that's worse than childbirth normally, but you take my point. So there I was. I felt this is a great thing that we can do it this way. But of course, there's still thousands of people who are doing the same thing and probably not enough pharmacists, and the ones that are there aren't funded in the way they need to be.
Absolutely, and what we need to make sure is that people go to where it's most vital for them to attend. So you're not seeing a lesser rate clinician by going to see a pharmacist. We've got many years of training. We are experts in medication. We look at those drugs and we know what the impact it's going to have on your body and potential side effects, and we communicate those to you. But one last point here, Ian, for me, the key part is we are not a second-rate clinician. You get very well-trained healthcare professionals accessible on the high street, and we need to save those more complex areas for the GPs where there is time to sit down with someone. And we need to make sure that you don't go to A&E. For example, if you've just got a sore throat, for example, your first point of call would probably be your pharmacist for most people. And that is the key point, saving resources for those who really need them.
100%. Listen, Thorin, great to have you on with us again. Thank you for your time. Thorin Gobind, pharmacist and healthcare expert. That's the one and only time I've ever done it, mooching into my throat was killing me. And I genuinely thought, I'm not going to do that. I've got to get a phone call in by 8 o'clock. I'm going to be number 67 in the queue. And then I'm going to wait for, it seems ridiculous. I just mooched down to the pharmacist and I just happened to walk straight in. The pharmacist was free. And they went, yeah, all right, come in here. And it solved the problem. It did feel genuinely really good. I felt like I was in a really civilized world for that little window. And I hadn't taken up my own time in having to be told, yeah, we've got an appointment a week on Tuesday, having been in a queue for 45 minutes. But I haven't taken up somebody else's place who would need it more urgently. And of course, you know, there are people who go to A&E for sore throats, sadly. I'm sure there was a small amount, I'd like to think, do it, but some do. So it was perfect. That was perfect. But of course, if more people continue to do that, then you might end up creating the same problem at the pharmacies. But they are really good with stuff like that. What is the solution to the NHS? I mean, good Lord. I mean, I've never spoken to a health secretary who didn't want to solve it. But one man or woman can't solve it. You know, this is just, it's seismic. What is the answer? Back with your calls and comments in a couple of moments. Don't go away, Jack in Peterborough. This is Talk.
So a lot of these people who come from Syria or the Middle East, are various areas of Africa, they say, oh, we're from Sudan, because they know that the British Home Office allows in 99% of Sudanese asylum seekers. We allow pretty much more than 90% of Afghani asylum seekers. So there's this sort of a league table that we've got of people from various countries who get almost automatic leave to live here. It's out of control.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes from Dan in Staffordshire, who says, afternoon, Ian. On ID, we've been talking a bit about digital ID. I had to produce a birth certificate last year for a passport, so I ordered another one. When it came, I read it all the small print as well, and it stated that my birth certificate is not proof of identity, yet I got a passport. So how does that work? Somewhere in my lizard brain, I seem to remember somebody telling me that once before. But you got the passport. That's interesting. Back to your calls in a second. Voice of Doom, day 3. It's a mystery voice with a political angle. Who is this?
Quite a successful project.
Think of a past politician. Who is this?
Quite a successful project.
87222. Only message if you think you know who it is. One more time.
Quite a successful project.
And if we get a correct answer, we'll tell you after the headlines. If not, it rolls over to Monday on the programme. Who is this?
Quite a successful project.
87222 if you think you know. Back with your calls. Jack's in Peterborough. Jack, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Oh, hello, Ian. Yeah, it's just a quick one. I've sat and observed, obviously, it took 2 years for Donald Trump to finally act on this with the help of Tony Blair, obviously, and the British government making the false recognition of a Palestinian state. I think this could have been formed a long time ago and protests could have been stopped and the synagogue attack could have been stopped.
Yeah.
If this had just been nipped in the bud on October the 7th and the release of the hostages, we're a country with red buttons that have nuclear missiles. If any country steps out of line, then they need to be warned. And I'm not being funny, I don't think this peace arrangement's going to last because Israel's had too much effect on it, and so is Palestine, and these protests aren't going to stop, I don't think, personally. And I think the country is in an absolute mess. It's divided at the moment. We're focused on Bollywood, digital IDs and donkeys. It's a revolving door.
Where should our... What is it? It's almost like we need a reset, isn't it? I don't want to sound like the WEF, like a great reset, but you know what I'm saying. We need a kind of a recalibrating of how we do business.
We do. It's a depressing nation, and I don't feel a part of any community anymore. I think we're all divided. We're paying hundreds of millions to taxpayers' money, VAT, on everything we buy, the air we breathe, and everything we do. And then we're paying it into a government that can't control a society.
Spot on. Spot on. I love that last comment. Jack, thank you for that. Brilliantly put. Steve in Beckenham says, I have no passport or driving licence. Last year, I tried to rent an Airbnb, but I couldn't because I had no ID that they would accept. I decided to apply for an ID card, but I was told I needed a driving licence or a passport to prove my identity. You couldn't make it up. Well, that seems it's not legal. There must be another option to that. You don't have to have a driving licence. Loads of people don't drive. You don't have to have a passport either. William is in North Ayrshire. William, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. I spoke to you that often that I'm expecting a Christmas card from you.
Yeah, I was out shopping for them just today, funnily enough.
And an invite to your Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
Ian, it's regarding the NHS, and this is the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed, and I think now is the perfect time to do it, because people need to realise that although the NHS, it's not fit for purpose anymore.
Yeah.
It's got middle sections that need dragged out screaming and kicking, and they need put in the bin, and it really needs to get put back in focus. And I think now is the right time to do it, because if reform comes in, reform is going to highlight all the waste, and people will sit back and they'll still say, yeah, but it's still our NHS.
Yeah.
The NHS is a basket case, is a absolute black hole that just keeps sucking money out of the exchequer, and it really needs reformed.
It really does, and I don't... Tinkering with it, we all now know isn't going to change it, right? Even if, you know, some of it works brilliant. We all have those experiences, don't we, William? When you walk into a hospital for an appointment, it all goes tickety-boo, everything's fine, you meet the right person, the appointment's on time, you get done what you need to done, and you go home and go, wow, it does still work. But, of course, it doesn't en masse, because there's too many areas where it doesn't. It needs something bigger than just a health secretary with a few bright ideas.
Well, I'd like to go to the hospital that you go to, because it's certainly not the hospitals that we've got up in Scotland.
Well, I have to say, I haven't been to one for a long time, not a hospital. About 5 years ago, I think, was the 4 years was the last time. But I hear it, and for every good story of somebody having that, you'll hear 2 or 3 others where it hasn't been. My other half had a procedure a couple of months ago now, and that took something like 2 years. before she eventually had it, when papers were lost and appointments were lost. It was horrendous. William, I've got to move for time, but you've been great as ever. Thank you very much indeed for that. That's William in North Ayrshire. More comments coming through in a few moments. The voice of doom. Will we get a right answer? Here's the voice.
Quite a successful project.
87222 if you think you know who that is right now. 3 o'clock. Let's get the headline.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Certainly is. Welcome back to the home of common sense. We are talking Trump, of course, declaring there will be everlasting peace in Gaza. The peace deal has been ratified by Israel. Plans to bring home last surviving hostages, those that are no longer alive as well. Won't stop those what they call themselves pro-Palestinian groups. They're just anti-Semitic marchers. They're going to apparently carry on marching, which kind of tells you sort of what you already knew. This was never about a pro-Palestinian position. This is just people who have a pathological hatred of Jews and Israel. It's literally that simple. Also this afternoon, you may remember the story of Hamid Koskan. He's seen now a victory of free speech, which saw him getting fined £240. Remember this, for burning a Quran. Well, it's now been overturned as the judge affirmed the right to offend in a liberal democracy. Koskan's bold protest against radical Islam was hailed by the Free Speech Union as a triumph against creeping blasphemy laws, defending the core values of freedom and tolerance. It was the most extraordinary judgment in the last case. We'll look at that in just a couple of moments. And Labour's digital ID saga continues with potential expansion now to 13-year-olds, kids as young as 13. Labour has also praised simultaneously India's biometric system as a model where over 1.1 billion people have digital ID. Of course, the Prime Minister has been over in India this week. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk. We'll have the voice of doom. Hopefully we've got a right answer. We'll tell you that in just a bit. I want to come back then to this story of Hamid Koskan's victory for free speech. Saw his £240 fine for burning a Quran overturned. We know what happened, and we're aware of this curious case where, I mean, you do wonder sometimes who our judges are. His burning of the Quran, which I think was referred to by the previous judge as you burnt the holy book. The holy book. That was a really telling comment in this. On the face of it, didn't sound it, but I think that was really quite revealing. When a man who had attacked him with a knife, essentially trying to bring in his own blasphemy law. He also got into trouble as well, but not as much as you might think. I mean, everything about it was really, really bizarre. Let's speak with Sam Armstrong, consultant at the Free Speech Union, a regular with us, of course, here on Talk. Afternoon to you, Sam. So it's a good day, but it should never have got to this stage.
No, and I can't really do better than the words of the judge today, who said there is no offence of blasphemy in our law. Burning a Quran might be an act that many Muslims find upsetting and offensive. The law, though, is not a mechanism to avoid people being hurt or upset, even grievously upset. The right to freedom of expression, if it's a right worth having, must include the right to express views that offend, shock or disturb. And I'm afraid what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and if that goes for the rest of us, then it goes for people of all religious backgrounds. And I accept that Muslims find that particular sacristy in their holy text and are upset when it's burnt, but it's very clear people in this country are free to protest in any which way they might like. And for some bizarre reason, in this case and only this case, the law was changed for one particular religion. That was wrong. It was wrong from the start. And the question is, why did the police, why did the Crown Prosecution Service, why did a district judge all not realise what Mr Justice Benathan did, which is this case was never, ever, ever a crime.
Yeah, and what was, I mean, the previous judge, you know, his comments were frankly all over the place. I mean, they were, if we want to talk about what is offensive, someone utilising the law as that judge did, I think would be a genuine case where we could argue it was an offence against common sense, it was an offence against, well, as it turned out, the law of the land. I mean, it was just curious, and in his summing up, as you will remember, Sam, the judge was very defensive of the religion, because he got done, didn't he, Hamid Koskan, initially for, I can't remember what the crime was, but it was
causing harassment, alarm or distress to the religious institution of Islam.
There it is. I mean, that is extraordinary in itself, and the judge said nothing anywhere near what today's judge has said. You do wonder what law school he went to.
Yeah, well, quite. Look, he was a more junior judge, and maybe it takes, in today's day and age, a kind of Oxford-educated superstar of the bar and bench in order to work out what the basic laws we have on the books are. And I think there's definitely a case, as Nick Timothy has said, for amending the laws in this area, for making it much, much tougher. But I can't help but question, and I don't like being in this situation, but I can't help but question if we would have possibly have been in the same situation if an atheist or indeed a Muslim protester had gone to some sort of Christian site and burned a copy of the Bible. I don't believe in those circumstances they would ever, ever, ever have been charged. Yeah. And it strikes me that there is this profound fear that runs through the very heart of the British establishment about doing anything to offend the Islamic faith. I don't quite know why it's there. I've got my theories, but you can't help but reach that conclusion because some of the decisions in this case are inexplicable. Yeah. The bloke that repeatedly shouted, "I'm going to kill you," while slashing at Hamid Koskan with a knife, forcing him into the floor, and then kept on going with his knife. Was he charged with attempted murder? No. Was he charged with terrorism? No. Was he charged with affray, a serious offence? No. He was charged with common assault. The same thing that I would be charged when you were walking into the studio and I walk out on a Monday, Ian, I gave you a bit of a shove because I thought you'd said something daft on the show.
Yeah.
It was preposterous, undercharged.
An angry, violent man wielding a knife, saying, "I'm going to kill you." It's almost like a Monty Python sketch. And, you know, literally trying to make contact with it was done for, as you say, a common assault. I mean, it was utterly ridiculous. The whole thing was ridiculous. And, of course, this particular man, Mr. Koskan, his reason for burning the... I'm not suggesting people go around burning anything in the street. It's probably not a good idea to set fire to anything in a public place. But his reasons were actually his own sort of protest against the situation in Turkey, if I've read this correctly.
Yeah, the guy was born as an Armenian Kurd, which you don't need to be an expert on geopolitics to tell you isn't a great mixture in modern Turkey.
Yeah.
He'd been an atheist all his life. He came to that conclusion perfectly legitimately. And then he'd been involved in atheist politics. His reward for doing that was his brother got murdered in a terrorist attack and he got sent to prison for 10 years. He got released. He came to this country because he thought, well, at least there I might be able to talk about what I consider the ills of Islam. He went to the consulate of the country that he was protesting against, and he presumably had very good reason to protest against, and he conducted his own one-man protest. And as the judge said today, if you can't protest outside the consulate of a country whose government you object to, well, where can you protest?
Correct.
And there seems to be an attitude amongst certain people that the solution is to set up, 12 car parks around the M25 where different people can come and protest different things. And that's the only place you're entitled to have free speech. No, we live in a slightly messy country in which people are allowed to say what they want to say. And you know what? Actually, when you let everyone argue it out, when you let everyone have their say, when you rehearse the arguments, you normally, 9 times out of 10, the common sense of the British public comes to the right conclusion. So you've always got to ask, if that's the case, why are these people so determined to stop the public hearing the truth?
Yeah, spot on. Listen, Sam, thanks for joining us. This news breaking only in the last hour or so. Sam Armstrong, consultant at the Free Speech Union, a regular with us here on Talk, of course. It is deeply fascinating that it ever got to this stage. And I can't imagine through what lens the previous judge was looking in order to have drawn the initial conclusions. I mean, just extraordinary. Simon says, can I just point out that although 26 migrants have been sent back, another 26 plus their families will come back in. That's correct, yes. There's not mathematically, I mean, the whole thing is a nonsense, but mathematically in particular, it's a complete nonsense. This one from Lynn in Yorkshire says, no need just to ban the burqa, just ban all face coverings in public. Young men in balaclavas are more of a problem than Muslim women. As far as I'm concerned, anyone who covers up their face is up to no good. That's probably a reasonable point. I think if you're wearing some kind of headdress, I don't have a real problem with that. I saw a very stylish Muslim woman yesterday who was probably, mid-20s, early 30s, looked kind of like she just walked off a catwalk in a very fashionable sort of sense, wearing a kind of a headscarf which I think was probably connected to her faith. It was kind of a gold in colour. It matched the outfit she was wearing. She looked $1 million, this young lady, and I don't think we're into banning that, are we? But simultaneously, as Lynn says, if you can't see your face and you're making your way around shops, and whether it's a balaclava or whether it's some other form of religious headwear, is there an argument, a separate argument on that? Let's get a voice note. This is from Carl.
Good afternoon. I fixed the Middle East. They tell me it couldn't be done, and I fixed the Middle East. The most beautiful victory there's ever been. They say next year I'll win the Nobel Peace Prize. They're going to remake the whole category just for me. And it'll be the biggest, most beautiful trophy ever. Perhaps then I'll take a residency in the UK and come and sort your problems out. Thank you.
Wow, was that? Oh, it literally was. Okay, I thought it was at first somebody just messing it up. What it actually was. Pleased to clarify. Thank you, Carl, for that. Wonderful. British universities have hit a 10-year low in global rankings. Well, that's not a good headline, is it? With fewer than 50 in the top 500. Despite Oxford holding the top spot for a record 10th year, the UK now lags behind the US, India and Japan, highlighting a growing gap in research quality. Let's get a word on this from Charlie Bentley-Astor, writer and commentator, who attended it's a beautiful university, as Donald Trump would say. You had that experience yourself, Charlie, but on the whole, as a country, what's gone wrong? Why are we dropping down the league?
In a simple statement, diversity statements. Diversity statements both in the recruiting of students and in the recruiting of academics and in the allocation of research grants. So particularly, well, this applies to all subjects, but it even applies to STEM subjects like medicine, engineering, physics. Anyone applying for a major grant or for doctoral research must submit a diversity statement where they say how their research will take into account various DEI initiatives, so diversity, equity and inclusion, known as sort of anti-racism statements, and basically any application that doesn't have this attached and isn't formulated in that sort of glowing language of you know, we're going to positively discriminate against white people and people who are sort of included in white adjacent, normally high performing Asians, like the Chinese and the Japanese and the Koreans, then they won't get that grant. Just straight up, doesn't matter how inspiring or courageous or ambitious the statement is, or how necessary the research is. Unless this diversity statement is attached, it won't happen. And
what kind of absolute crock of nut jobs came up with this? At what point did somebody sit around a table and go, hey, here's a great idea? And did they not at any point consider, like, during any kind of rule change, I think one, intellectually speaking, is compelled to look at the downsides of something or the knock-on effects of something. You know, I teach my kids about knock-on effects, and I think that's quite easy to get your head around. So somebody comes up with this idea, I've got this great DEI initiative that we should attach to research projects and the like. You'd think at least one person in the room would have gone, well, that's ridiculous, get out. But, you know, democratically, have a chat about it. Did no one flag up that the ultimate problem with this is where we are now?
Well, if it was all decided in one room on one evening, we might be able to sort of track our way back to that room, find those people and have a word and do away with all this stuff. But it's not. This is a sedimentation of a whole sort of intellectual philosophy that's taken hold of the universities and trickled down into workplaces and schools. Sort of 70 years later, this sort of originates in the 50s and 60s, these ideas. But essentially, it sort of says that anyone can achieve anything, which means that you know, some guy from sub-Saharan Africa with no education, if you give him an Oxford education, then he'll become the best engineer you've ever seen. And likewise, it doesn't matter if you've got a young white lad who's been privileged enough to go to Eton and Oxford and has glowing grades. There's something intrinsically morally flawed in him, and therefore, no matter how intelligent he is, he will trip up the whole of society but by his inclusion. And so whilst it's true that talent can come from anywhere, not everyone has the full capacity to achieve brilliance. We know this instinctively. Everyone has the ability to excel at something, but not necessarily academically. And part of the problem is that we've put all this emphasis, particularly where we've become very technological and information age, and the fact that literacy is the highest it's ever been in the whole of human history across the world, means that more and more people are getting involved in intellectual pursuits. But we're not all equally gifted in that regard. And that doesn't mean we don't have a place in society, but it means that people are getting elevated to roles that they're not suited to, and we all lose out as a result.
I often wonder about this, whether we're talking about universities or these organisations that purport to go around big corporations, you know, telling the bosses, you know, we'll make your staff not racist. You know, it's only £50,000, and we'll come in with we've got some training courses. And you know, what tends to happen, I think some of the big banks or organisations go, wow, that's a great, yeah, we don't want any racist staff. And no one goes, well, actually, you haven't got any already, you haven't got any. But nonetheless, let's de-racist them just in case. So in comes somebody with their flip charts and their PowerPoint presentation, and they all sit around in one of those meeting rooms that sits usually empty most of the week. And they get de-radicalised, even though they didn't have the views in the first place. But of course, you know, they've got the subconscious bias issue going on, so they probably are secretly racist. It's kind of all in that ballpark, isn't it? Where we've sort of started a multi-billion-dollar industry across the world in this old guff that companies just, or organisations, do they just think, well, you know, it sounds like we're being kind, so that's a good thing to do, without anybody stopping to say, this is hogwash and it has no place in our society?
Well, actually, research into these sort of anti-racist sessions have proven that people become more racist or perceived to be more racist because people are taught about things like microaggressions. And so my rolling my eyes at someone is as a direct result of what they've said because of their sexuality, their racial background, their class background. It's not that they've just said something I think is ridiculous and where they come from doesn't matter. But you've nailed it, Ian, in that actually more and more people are coming out of university with nowhere to go except the HR sector. And so it's a self-sustaining thing in that you've got lots of, particularly women, because women now are the majority who go to university, at least in the West. And it's women who fill up these departments, middle managerial roles. And so there's just a funnel of people coming in one end and out the other, simply to fill up these HR roles, these diversity statement roles. And of course, people go in and they believe, going to university, they believe they're doing a good thing, that they're being a moral person, and then they get paid wicked amounts of money to reiterate what they've learned and been told at university. And we're talking like, we've seen it within the NHS, £75,000 a year for like a well-being monitor within a hospital.
Yep.
And it's like that's half what a nurse is getting paid, 40 hours a week. And so I'd rather have two nurses and ditch the well-being person, but that makes me bigoted.
Apparently so, yes. Well, listen, did you just roll your eyes at me, Charlie, by then, at that last point? I think that there it is. Yeah, you see, I know what's going on there. You're thinking, look, pasty white boy, came from a council house. I know you did as well, so, you know, you're allowed to say anything in that respect. Listen, Charlie, thank you. Great to have you on as ever. Charlie Bentley-Astor, writer and commentator, former Oxbridge herself. None of that malarkey was going on then, but she spotted it and she has called it out, and rightly so. That's why we're going down the rankings, says Charlie. Over to you again, 0344 499 1000.
There's going to be a private ceremony for 1,000 guests in Manchester Cathedral, led by the Dean of Manchester, who calls Ricky an icon of this city. And then after the private service, the cortege will go on to the Etihad Arena, Manchester City's football ground, which is, you know, Ricky's beloved team. And you can see outside the gym here pictures of Ricky, flags as well, Manchester City shirts. People have written on them, "Thank you for the memories, R.I.P, sleep tight Ricky." So a very emotional day, but also a celebratory one for one of Manchester's favourite sons.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. It's worth just having a quick word. We're going to go back to the calls in just a second. But as you've been hearing, Nigel Farage has been in court this week. This was after an Afghan migrant had put out posts on TikTok threatening to kill the Reform UK leader. That is not a particularly nice thing to do. And we know and we have seen in the past that politicians are always in precarious positions, and if they are those that put their head above the parapet and speak passionately about some issues, then they're almost doubly or triply likely to get the attention from undesirable, dangerous characters like this person, Fayaz Khan, who's just been found guilty in court. Now, what's interesting about this, of course, is that Nigel Farage, not for the first time, encountered somebody who wanted to do harm to him. Looked like a harmless milkshake, didn't it? Not on one occasion, more than one occasion. It looked like just a little bit of litter thrown from a bin. None of this stuff is good. All of this stuff is really rather bad. And I'll tell you why it's bad. And we've seen this with Keir Starmer and the Labour conference just a week or more ago, who had such an obsession with Nigel Farage that they played right in to the very problem that we have unfolding today, where a man has been found guilty of threatening to kill a politician in this country. Let that settle for 1 second. The kind of language that the Starmers and the Lammies and the like use about politicians like Nigel Farage, based, by the way, on the fact they fundamentally just disagree with them. But that's not good enough, of course. That's not good enough to just disagree with somebody. You've got to go for the whole thing. So we won't just disagree with them. We will say they're racist. They lack morality. They're in the wrong camp when it comes to right and wrong. And all they mean is that they disagree with them. I mean, it's just beyond belief. And then we have somebody who kind of acts on that with a threat. A threat should be taken incredibly seriously, to the point that it got him into court, and he's just been found guilty of this. Let's have a listen to the migrant who's now been convicted of threatening to kill the Reform UK leader.
You not know me. I gonna come to England. I gonna mother pasa, man, you know. There's mother pasa. Every country know me, Vamaya, mother pasa. I'm TikToker. I'm not gang. I'm not mafia. I'm mafia's papa, mother pasa, man. Rais Montana.
I mean, the guy is clearly nuts, but he's also dangerous. And I don't think anybody, when you hear that, would say otherwise. He ended up in court. He threatened to shoot the Reform leader. This was after Mr Farage had criticised his plan to illegally cross the Channel in a small boat. He's now been found guilty. That is good. I would maybe take a guess he's probably going to go to jail for a crime as serious as that. But this is the United Kingdom, so who the hell knows what might go on. But don't let this moment run without harking back to what I just said about the language politicians use. Now, of course, this incident predates Starmer's obsession with Nigel Farage and the Labour conference. But nonetheless, it's that kind of language. And we talk about Charlie Kirk and what happened to Charlie Kirk. And what happened to Charlie Kirk, I'm absolutely convinced, was in part because certain sectors of society, maybe some of those establishment figures, had very casually and very regularly written people like Charlie Kirk off as essentially not just a right-winger, but as a Nazi, as a madman, as a person who's at his core, at best, is a racist, and at worst, he's the kind of person that probably wants to eradicate certain people off the planet. Kirk never said any of this stuff, by the way, but if you caricature somebody so regularly, so constantly, so emphatically, if you do that, this is what happens, okay? This is what happens. You get a bullet in the side of your neck, or you have half-wits like this making TikTok videos. I mean, that's how stupid the bloke is. He actually published his own threat to kill someone. And who knows what might have happened? What would the next person do? And this is because of the division in politics, the way people have decided that the best way to attack your opponent isn't to intelligently disagree with them and construct a nice, reasonable argument as to why they're wrong and you're right. No, just write them off as a racist. That's that simple. Job done. And all of your followers, the left-wing meerkats, their heads spring up and go, well done, Mr. Starmer, you're absolutely right. Of course you are. No, you're absolutely wrong. You're not just wrong, you are dangerously wrong. So now we have a man facing prison as a result of that. And thank goodness, at least this bit of the British legal system has worked as it should do. Someone who's banged to rights goes before the judge and they're found guilty. We will await the sentencing, because that will be the next test of how serious this is taken. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Looking forward to that. This comes in from Anne, Anne's in France, who says, aren't motorcyclists required to remove their helmets when going into certain garages? Yeah, generally speaking. In 2005, Bluewater, the shopping centre, banned hoodies due to antisocial behaviour. I seem to remember that. Have a great weekend. Love the show. Thank you, Anne, for that. Yeah, there is a general face thing. I think what's happening in Italy, it's not just about the face thing, it's about separationism, as I think she's calling it, the Prime Minister, and having, commonality and not dividing people up so graphically as allowing people to wear religious garb that clearly has, to many, the very opposite effect to social cohesion. It has nothing more than social division. Fair point. Let's go to Sean in Wakefield on this issue. Sean, what are you thinking? Good afternoon to you.
Well, good afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
Yeah, your last segment, you spent 5 minutes discussing this thing with Nigel Farage and the threat on his life. And
hello? Did Sean just disappear? I think he might have just cut himself off at that moment. We will try and get you back, Sean. Don't panic. This comes from Phil in Essex. With all this digital ID, what would happen if you refused to carry a mobile phone? How would they implement digital ID on you? Are they going to tag you? That's the next one, by the way, Phil. Yeah, that's the bit I don't get. You're not forced to get a smartphone. And by the way, what if you can't afford a smartphone? Quite seriously, what if you don't want to? So we're now going to have a government-mandated type of phone you would have to have, right? I mean, you might just mooch around with a little Nokia. Andrew's in Hertfordshire. Andrew, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Yeah, as you said, it's always good to have debate. So I'll challenge you on when you said the bloke was nuts. There's a lot of people out there who've got ongoing mental health problems who are good people. This man can't hide behind that, so we're going to drop that type of language, you and I, Ian, and move forward together. Is that okay?
Drop what type of language?
Calling people nuts that have committed clear criminal offences.
Yeah, he's nuts, right? I mean, that's clear.
No. God, we should do this over a drink. Okay, moving on to the
you think he's sane, do you?
I think yes, because if we allow him to be,
so you're saying if you it's a get out of jail card almost if you say it's a mental health issue. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but it's also a turn of phrase, isn't it, from somebody who's bonkers? You don't literally mean they are clinically diagnosed, although I would imagine somebody like this probably sits on a very curious part of the spectrum of danger.
Yeah, and the answer to it for you and I is it's your round. So we'll move on.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens come the elections next May, of course.
Exactly. We won't get to May. They'll be gone before that, as we discussed before. Now, look, Trump, the people that are under most threat for this is the rest of the world. Since that correspondence dinner when Obama said to him and ridiculed him in front of his wife, as Bill Burr said, that was the moment that Trump said, I'm going to have that job. And he got the job, and Obama lives in his head. To get to the level of Obama, he had to win that award, and he hasn't got it. So I don't know who he's going to turn his anger on, but someone's going to get it, and I don't know who in the world it is, but I wouldn't want to be them.
That's a good point, isn't it? Do you think 2026, is that next year, 2026, has it already got Trump's name on it, assuming this peace process lasts?
Yeah, so his big friend is Larry Ellison, and he put together an America's Cup team, and he paid billions for it. And then he got Ainsley to run the boat, and he became the captain. And Ainsley sacked him after 20 seconds into the first race.
Yeah.
When you've got academics who are looking at a prize that is for peace, there is no way that they can be shoehorned into giving it to Trump. And remember that the Nobel Peace Prize, when it was given to Henry Kissinger, an American comedian said satire is dead. So then, exactly.
I love that.
And what you have to understand is that they are academics and they won't be influenced. So he can't, like Larry Ellison did. He bullied his way into being captain, bought everything, but he couldn't stand up. Trump has bullied himself into this position. He's bullied Netanyahu and everyone. Actually, when they look at it in the cold light of day, a bit like me standing on the scales in the morning, I want to be 15 stone, but it says 17.
Yeah. It's funny that Larry Ellison is also a good friend of Tony Blair's as well, and is apparently likely to be the guy that might get the digital ID gig.
Yeah, he's a very interesting character. When he ran Oracle, he would go across from Oracle to a restaurant, and if there was a young couple in there with an attractive girl, he would go to the Mercedes dealership. He would get the car keys to a Mercedes soft top and just give it to the woman in front of the man and say, "That's a gift, no pressure." That's the type of person he is, and he did it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. Does that make him a good guy or a bit of a creep?
Well, I'll tell you what, if Epstein had done it, we'd look at him in a different way, and Prince Andrew, wouldn't we?
100% we would. 100%. It's all a bit iffy, isn't it? Listen, Andrew, great call as ever. Thank you. Andrew in Hertfordshire. John is in Bradford. How you doing, John?
Oh, not too bad.
Good.
Yes, I think should get the Peace Prize. He's done a lot of work, and of course, this is good for the state of Israel as well. What worries me is Iran. They started this war because Israel was about to sign an agreement with Saudi Arabia, and they would have been left out in the cold. And even if there is peace in Gaza, there's all those other countries around Gaza. You've got Hezbollah, you've got the Houthis. You know, if they start financing them to fire rockets into Israel, you know, Trump's got to turn around and say to Iran, "You step 1 foot out of line, brother, and we'll be in there and sort you out."
100%. 100%. What do you reckon this time next year? Where do you think we'll be, John?
I hope to God it's peace, because, you know, the amount of insults, the amount of verbal abuse that the state of Israel's got over the last year or so is absolutely, totally disgusting. And, you know, I think a lot of these people, what you need to do is follow the money. These people are being paid to do this, and we all got a good idea of where the money's coming from.
Yep.
And I would turn around and say, right, we arrest these people, we find out if they're claiming state benefits, you know, they can't work because of this, and they're sick and the other, and find out if they're claiming benefits, and if so, cut it off.
Yeah, I mean, that would work, wouldn't it? But
it would indeed.
Can you imagine anyone doing that?
Oh, well, no, not this government. All this government wants to do is if you look at what's happening, they're letting all these people in, and they're under the impression that if they let all these people in and give them British citizenship, they're going to vote for Labour. They're not going to vote for Labour. No. They're going to vote for Islamists that stand in, and then we're in real trouble. So, you know, they're living in cloud cuckoo land.
There's a lot of cloud cuckoo land dwelling going on out there at the moment. John, thank you very much indeed. But is this moment of peace in the Middle East, is this the start of something? And I mean something much wider and not initially kind of connected to peace in the Middle East. If we get a solution there and then we got one in Ukraine, that kind of law of unintended consequences, but in a positive way, where there is a sort of there's a feel-good factor, there's a confidence, and where there's a confidence, the economy starts to grow. People are more productive, people are happier. A group of people in one country that were en masse, pretty unhappy, pretty sad, whatever, suddenly become happy. You end up with all of these different kind of actions and dynamics taking place. And things change, and you know the world. We enter a period of, oh God, do you remember when there was a war going on in Ukraine? There was one in the Middle East, Israel, Gaza, and all that goes away. The other unintended consequences of that could be amazing, right? Could be absolutely amazing if everything gets better. But are you sensing that everything is going to get better? James in Essex says Starmer can stop the boats and illegal immigration overnight, the Navy in the water, and turn the boats back. But he won't, because he wants to bring his digital ID in and using the illegal immigration as an excuse to do it, says James. Well, that may be true, but of course we have to remember that this has been going on way before Starmer got into power. I don't know what their excuse was to not stop them. Steve in Sheffield, digital ID is a sheep in wolves' clothing. We already have passports, national insurance numbers, NHS numbers, driving licence. Driving licence, which is more than enough. It won't stop the boats or illegal working. People will just claim benefits instead. Who ate we even giving... Why are we, should that be, even giving migrants benefits? Why we're not giving shopping vouchers? I think there is some... Are there some areas where you actually get a preloaded card rather than... I mean, you don't get much if you're living in a hotel where you've got meals supplied already, then you only get like a tenner a week. So I think on that basis, but do you get that in cash on a card? I'm not absolutely sure. 0344 499 1000. Let's do the Voice of Doom. We didn't do the Voice of Doom. Did we get a winner on the Voice of Doom? Did we get a winner? This was the voice we've been playing you.
Quite a successful project.
Quite a successful project. Who said that? These were some of the guesses. Peter Cargwell, no. Norman Baker, it was not. Golda Meir, former Israeli Prime Minister, no. Gavin Williamson, no. Matt Hancock, Tim Farron, Zia Youssef, none of those. Alex Chalk, no. But we have got a winner. It was James Purnell, says Kit in Bath. Well done, because that was pretty cryptic stuff. James Purnell, he was Culture Secretary. Was it under Gordon Brown or was it under Tony Blair? One of the two. He then went off to become a big cheese at the BBC, if you remember. James Purnell, former Labour Cabinet Minister pre-2010, was the right answer, so we'll have a brand new one on Monday. This is Talk, the time, 4:45.
The way to deal with it is quite simply to detain every single illegal immigrant securely behind wire until such time as we can return them to whence they came or they ask to go back. Now, that does require significant legal changes, but this government doesn't seem to want to be fair, neither did the previous, want to take those legal, do that legal amendment, withdraw from the ECHR and so on. They didn't want to do it. It was all too contentious for them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk coming up on 10 to 4. And this story, Canterbury Cathedral's graffiti-style art installation has been slammed as sacrilegious, with critics comparing it to an underground car park, featuring phrases like, "Why did you create hate?" It's been accused of disrespecting the sacred space, despite leaders defending it as a nod to historical graffiti. Let's find out what one man thinks of this. Dr. Gavin Ashenden, former Anglican bishop, former Church of England priest, and editor of the New English Catholic Substack. Good afternoon to you, Gavin. Nice to have you with us. What the heck is going on here? Graffiti in the cathedral?
Ian, I think it's worse than that. I mean, it's a no-brainer that you don't take one of the most beautiful buildings in the world and paint it up like that. But the thing is, these things are supposed to be codes. I mean, graffiti is, of course, a code of its own. When I go into a city and I see the trains covered with graffiti and the shops covered with graffiti, I say the message I get is the thugs and the pushers and the vandals are in charge. There is no order here. There is no law. This is a dangerous place to be. Civilization is breaking down. That's what graffiti says to me and to lots of others. The idea that you could put in a beautiful building of any kind, it seems to me to be so counterproductive to civilization that frankly I find it deeply offensive just to being a civilized person in a society where I want some order and safety. That you could take that further and defecate in a cathedral is actually beyond my... I simply can't get myself into the mindset of someone who's first of all responsible for one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, but thinks it's okay to artistically defecate in it.
Yeah, I think it's extraordinary. I share your assessment as well of the beauty of Canterbury Cathedral. It is arguably my favourite building on the planet. I used to live nearby. Whenever I go to Canterbury, I make sure I go into the cathedral. It is absolutely breathtaking. It is stunning. It is sacred. It has everything that a cathedral should have. It's just beautiful. I even attended a funeral once in the cathedral as well. It's extraordinary. So to see what appears to be, I don't know, is this sort of some official body getting down with the kids, do you think, Gavin? Is that what this is all about?
The cathedral is run by a committee of Anglicans. There's a dean in charge of it, and he's got a group of helpers called the canons. And one of them has had this idea of, let's be relevant to the thugs. Or to the kids. I mean, however you want to describe people who identify with graffiti. The trouble is, it's a kind of complete selling out. We're already in a situation where, if you like, we've got two cultures, civilization and non-civilization. Our cities are dangerous people. Women get raped in them. Where the graffiti is are the dangerous places. How dare they take that uncivilized danger and put it into a place that is genuinely supposed to be a safe place for your soul as well as for your body?
Yes.
What are they doing? I mean, to say they should be sacked and sent away for retraining for a long time isn't the beginning of it. I simply can't understand the madness in their heads that they should do this. They've been given this treasure. Not only do they not know how to take care of it, but they want to give all the signs of vandalism that it's in the process of being destroyed. And it's nonsense to say, in graffiti language, why don't you think twice if you're flourishing? Wouldn't that be a good idea? Have you thought of talking to God in spray paint? That's no excuse. They don't know what they're doing. They shouldn't be allowed in there.
Yeah, and you might, in terms of the response, are any of your ecclesiastical peers and colleagues in favour of this, other than those that gave this one the green light?
No, I mean, simply no one can believe it happened. I mean, you'd hardly do it in an underground car park. I mean, I suppose, as if you were renting an underground car park and you had a bunch of thugs or drug pushers you wanted to get through to, and you want to say, God loves you in graffiti. I suppose you might just about then. But with what purpose in the end? I mean, who on earth do they think it's affecting? Instead, well, I mean, it's hard to find the words. There's something wrong with them. They need help.
Is this graffiti, and I don't say this in any defence of anything, Gavin, because I totally share your views on this, but are they stickers rather than graffiti? Literally sprayed onto the pillars.
I'm sure they're stickers because they're in deep financial trouble. They haven't got the money to paint it on and paint it off again.
Yes,
they're stickers. But we're not archaeologists who are worried about paint getting into the stones. That's beyond my pay grade.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the collapse of society and making people feel threatened, unsafe, and that the barbarians are at the gates. It's bad enough that the barbarians are graffitiing over our friends' shops and trains and houses, that they should be mimicked so that the graffiti takes place, stickers or not, in the most beautiful building in our culture. It's just beyond comprehension. Someone needs to take them somewhere and give them re-education for a very long time. There are very few people I think who ought to have that, but these people, you know, perhaps they smoke cannabis or something, who knows?
I'm sure they would deny that, but maybe that's when they did the graffiti.
They need an excuse of some kind, Ian, so if it's not cannabis, it's something worse.
There it is, Gavin. Thank you very much for your time. Really lovely to have you on with us. Dr. Gavin Ashenden, former Anglican bishop, former Church of England priest, now editor of the New English Catholic Substack, feeling very strongly about the what appears to be, I suppose Canterbury Cathedral would say, it's a temporary, almost like an exhibition. They are stickers that are put on parts of the cathedral to look like graffiti. It does look like the pillars have been graffitied, but they haven't. It's sticker, but nonetheless, the point is still made, isn't it? That do you deface a sacred place like that in any shape or form? Something that isn't. I know graffiti can be associated with street art, and some of it is incredibly amazing. We all know that, okay? But it can also be associated with wanton vandalism. And I just don't think necessarily the ornateness, the beauty, the history and everything that goes with it of Canterbury Cathedral is the place to, you know, mess around with your kind of contemporary messages in order to somehow wet the whistle of a few youths who might go, oh, I wasn't going to join the church, but now I see they've got some graffiti in the crypt. I might give it a go. Really? Andy is in Hertfordshire. Get a final word today, Andy, on universities. What are you thinking? Good afternoon.
I think we're breeding or we're educating robots.
Go up.
We seem to be coming out with the same rhetoric all over, not just in the universities, but everywhere. We seem to have reasonable debate or reasonable, honest debates gone out the window.
Yeah.
And the minute that you have an opinion, you're accused of being racist or you're wrong. Where did it go wrong that we had reasonable debates? Where did that stop?
You can't imagine somebody in, I don't know, 1978, when somebody was disagreeing with them on something, just calling them a racist. Because, I mean, I'm sure there was an example somewhere, but generally speaking, this seems to be a new kind of compunction from some of these people.
And I just feel we're easily offended.
Well, people love to be offended.
I'm a 60s, 70s child.
Yeah.
I went through all the things. There were things that were wrong. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, of course. Of course. Nobody's disputing that.
I was a well-rounded kid, I think, and grew up with and the morals that you have, you know if you're right or wrong.
Yeah.
I don't need a government or anybody to tell me. I know if I cross the line in everyday life. So therefore, I feel like I've become a minority in the sense that the speech that I used to have, I can't have.
Yeah. I get it. But we have, you know, when I worked at the BBC for about half an hour, Andy, you know, people being offended was a kind of very standard thing. It was so ingrained in all the different courses they send people on. You know, if you feel offended, it's your, you know, come and see us, come and see one of the mental health helpers who can talk you through it. It was encouraged. There's no wonder half the staff would queue up at the boss's door or HR or send emails or, you know, burst into tears or something, purporting to be offended by something. Andy, thank you very much. They made their people like that, Peter Cargwell.
Can I say your jacket offends me? And I need mental health support as a result. So
no, I'm offended.
Anything can be offensive. Anything at all can be offensive. Literally anything.
Who cares?
No one has the right not to be offended. Just move on. Get on with it. Get on with it.
Who cares? I'm offended. I remember working with somebody. They said to me, "Oh, I'm offended by that." I literally used the phrase, "I'm offended by that," and I looked at them and said, "Who cares if you're offended by that?"
My friend was in a very large department store. This woman cuts into the queue and she says, "You shouldn't be cutting into the queue. Go to the back of the line." And the woman goes, "That's offensive." And my friend said, "Good. It was meant to be." Go to the back of the line.
Brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
why did she think that was offensive to be told to go to the back? You teach kids that.
Didn't like it. Well, do we anymore? That's the question.
Silly old care.
Lots to discuss, and including something that actually is much more than offensive. In fact, it's worrying and it's against the law, and that is the threat, the death